Chapter 446. Old Nanny Chio's explanation was similar to Lu Cheng's conjecture. She had been able to hibernate like an animal when she was young and could barely manipulate the soil. Later, she joined a grave-robbing gang and learned some basic voodoo. She often didn't go out of the house for a few days because she had quietly left the ancient city. In the eyes of the neighbors, she became more and more mysterious and strange. Those who had lived with her for a period of time felt that she was even more strange. Sometimes, they felt a sense of horror and didn't dare to talk too much about her. The items related to the fighting formula were obtained during this process. Since most of them were damaged, the gang leader didn't value them much. Since Nanny Chio liked similar items, he simply gave them to her and asked her to take them home, just like the broken bottles and jars outside her room. Once, they had a lot of loot and sold it for a lot of money. Internal strife broke out in the gang. Someone tried to kill the leader with a sneak attack. Qiu Huajin took advantage of her supernatural ability and voodoo to take most of the money and items. She fled back to her hometown, where the other members didn't know. Since then, she rarely went out and lived a peaceful life. She would only sell 1 or 2 items when she needed money. Old Nanny Chio had been living like this for years, until 2 groups of people suddenly came knocking on her door. She was ill-informed and didn't know anything about the 9 words formula. She didn't believe that the item related to the fighting character in her possession had any value. She suspected that the descendants of the gang members had found her and were waiting for helpers to gather. She couldn't help but feel terrified, but she didn't dare to call the police and walk right into the trap. She used witchcraft to temporarily intimidate the 2 groups of people. Under their surveillance, during the noisiest time of the day, she took a few of the most valuable items and sank into the ground. She planned to hibernate for half a month. This was also the limit of her supernatural ability. She would only escape when the people at the door no longer paid attention to this place. She was smart enough to get a fake identity in another city and own 2 houses. She only stayed in Jingyun because she didn't want to leave the hometown she was familiar with. "I've said all I want to say. What do you want?" Old Nanny Chio looked at Lu Cheng with cold and fearful eyes. She wasn't very strong, but her witchcraft was mysterious and mysterious. That was why she didn't dare to fight the 2 groups of people head-on. She had to think of a way to escape. Facing the powerful and terrifying martial artists in front of her, it was hard for her to have any thoughts of resistance. Lu Cheng sighed to himself and smiled. "Where's the jade pendant with the word Do on it? Just for this?" Old Nanny Chio asked in surprise, her face full of confusion. Back then, that thing was just a piece of junk in the eyes of the leader. If it wasn't for its beauty, he wouldn't have wanted it. "I'm just looking around," Lu Cheng replied calmly. Old Nanny Chio glanced at him suspiciously and took out a jade pendant from her pocket. The pendant had a unique pattern and a delicate design. In the center of the pendant, there was a word, fighting, engraved on it, as if it was a work of God. The word, fighting, meant that it would never admit defeat. Lu Cheng lifted his eyelids slightly and sized up the jade pendant. Due to the passage of time, the Yin Qi had corroded it and damaged it severely. Even the charm of the fighting character was only left with a faint trace. To others, it was impossible to use it to practice any secret method. But to him, all he needed was a primer to induce the Jin Dan to resonate. That was enough. Keeping his expression unchanged, he squinted his eyes and signaled old Nanny Chio to put the jade pendant close to him. He tried to comprehend the essence and charm of the fighting character. After 7 or 8 minutes, he managed to visualize a vague, fighting character with a very faint charm. He formed a seal with both hands, one in front of the other, and pointed to his dantian. He then opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "My name is Fighting." Fighting. With an illusory buzzing sound, Lu Cheng felt the Jin Dan in his lower abdomen tremble under the influence of the fighting character in his mind. Ripples appeared one after another. The dazzling stars and scorching grand sun moved quickly and formed a fighting character that was powerful, domineering, terrifying, and full of explosive power. The charm of never lowering one's head to face everything was as real as it could be. Connected in reverse, the visualization diagram in Lu Cheng's mind changed rapidly and presented the correct form, leaving a deep impression on him. Fighting. Under old Nanny Chio's astonished gaze, Lu Cheng opened his mouth again, his ancient voice echoing. His muscles bulged and his momentum soared into the sky, overflowing with a strong fighting spirit. Old Nanny Chio couldn't help but move back a little because of the explosive power. The fighting formula increased one's strength for one explosive strike. The better he practiced it and the better he mastered it, the more terrifying the result would be. It's a bit like Kaioken. Lu Cheng thought in delight as he finally mastered the fighting formula. However, the fighting formula hadn't increased his strength by more than 30%, and he estimated that it would increase by 1 or 2 times at most in the future. Besides, the fighting formula was completed by stimulating the qi and blood and squeezing the body. Once the limit was exceeded, the body would collapse and couldn't recover without a long period of recuperation. It might even leave serious hidden dangers. While using the fighting formula, he also noticed the changes in his Jindan. Not only did it move the stars and ripple the water, but it also seemed to have awakened the swordsman formula, forwarding formula, army formula, and attainment formula. They turned into 5 nodes in the vast universe and formed a relatively stable structure. His premonition of danger seemed to have become stronger, and his supernatural abilities of ice and fire were connected to it to a certain extent. They were no longer isolated from the inside and outside, but more distinct at the root pulp level, giving him a feeling that he could really influence them. Phew. I'll be able to open the door to the inhuman stage and begin to transform after some time of consolidation? Lu Cheng nodded thoughtfully. After Peng Lian recovered from his injury, he completed the transformation and received the certificate of 5th pin, officially stepping into the inhuman realm. As for Renli, it was said that she had entered the stage of accumulating strength to overtake others. At the end of July, she successfully pushed open the door of the inhuman realm. Well, I'm not that slow either. Lu Cheng picked up the fighting jade pendant with a smile and said to old Nanny Chio, "How much is it?" He decided to go back and carefully study the changes in his Jindan. "How much is it?" For a moment, old Nanny Chio thought she had misheard him. At this stage, he could just take it away and she wouldn't dare to resist. After a moment of silence, she said, "It's not a good thing." 600. "Actually, if you don't name a price, I'll keep it for you," said Lu Cheng sincerely. "Anyway, I've already mastered the fighting formula. If I didn't want to keep it as a souvenir, I wouldn't even look at this jade pendant. And its actual value is only a few hundred in the eyes of others. Forget it. It's a troublemaker." Old Nanny Chio raised her eyelids and answered dispiritedly. "Okay." Lu Cheng touched his trouser pocket and suddenly felt a little embarrassed. He was afraid of a fight, so he only brought his cell phone and didn't bring his wallet. He felt his balls ache for more than 10 seconds and asked with a smile, "Can I pay with my cell phone?" "What?" Old Nanny Chio was confused. Lu Cheng cleared his throat and pretended to be normal. "I don't have money. I'll return the jade pendant to you." Old Nanny Chio suddenly understood what was going on. After a moment of silence, she said, "Then I'll give it to you. I don't know what will happen to me if I keep it." "Okay. I'll put the money in your room later." Lu Cheng put away the jade pendant and thought for a moment. "I told you I won't do anything to you. As long as you can avoid being found by others, I'll pretend I never came." Old Nanny Chio nodded slightly and didn't say anything. She gathered the bug's body and lay down again. The hard soil suddenly softened and she and the bug sank into it. Then it solidified again and disappeared without a trace. Lu Cheng turned around and carefully flashed out of the room. Before the hidden post noticed him, he had already jumped over the wall and disappeared into the night. Now that it was quiet, he looked at the jade pendant and called his wife with his cell phone. "I got it." After sending the message, he suddenly felt that it was unreal. The development of this matter was completely out of his expectations. Obtaining the fighting formula had been too easy. But on second thought, he felt relieved. This matter was actually very simple. If Huang Zihua and the others hadn't paid too much attention to it, and if it wasn't a coincidence that scared old Nanny Chiu, they would have gotten it long ago. Yan Zhika, who was in the afternoon, replied quickly with a dumbfounded expression, "Really? So fast?" Qing didn't leave for long. Yeah. Lu Cheng was proud of himself. He repeated the story with a smile and showed her the jade pendant. "It's really there." Yan Zhika was relieved at first. Then she clenched her fist and said, "Brother Cheng is awesome. Sister Ku is awesome too." Pfft, Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh. He happily replied with a few words and then said, "I'll teach you later. Why can't I teach my wife the fighting formula I got with my own ability?" "Okay." Yan Zhika sat and waited obediently. "Go back and get some sleep. Don't wander around outside." "Okay, I'll tell my master first." Lu Cheng thought for a while and suddenly said, "Forget it. I'll tell him in a few days." Since the military had everything under control and was watching his game like a parent, he wouldn't say anything. Let's see when they get anxious and take action. "You're so naughty," Yan Zhika said after a while. Lu Cheng was in a good mood. He hummed silently and returned to the inn. He didn't go back to sleep. Instead, he spent some time studying the changes in the Jindan. He was sure that under the guidance of his ice and fire supernatural abilities, he could smoothly trigger some of the energy inside the Jindan. As for the guidance, it would take time to figure it out. The rest of his gains were what he sensed at the first moment. 2 hours later, Lu Cheng went out as usual and found a place to train until the sun rose from the east. At 10 in the morning, Ho Yulin and Huang Zihua saw the elders of their sect. Chapter 447. Where is Lu Cheng? Fang Fakue, the elder of the Jingfa sect, whose forehead bulged like the god of longevity, asked in a deep voice. Huang Zihua was prepared for this question. "He went to old Nanny Chiu's house last night to look for clues, but I don't think he got anything. He didn't go out except for practicing martial arts this morning. He found out which hotel Lu Cheng was staying in through the police and sent someone to keep an eye on it. He didn't expect to stop Lu Cheng, but just wanted to know what was going on as soon as possible." "Okay." Fang Fakue nodded slowly. "Send more people to keep an eye on old Nanny Chiu. I don't believe that she hasn't shown any abnormality in front of others all these years." "What about you?" Huang Zihua blurted out in confusion. Fang Fakue turned to look out of the window. "I'll go to old Nanny Chiu's house again to see if you missed any clues." In the Li family's silver jewelry shop, the greedy and lazy Li Wanquan looked at the old man with thick eyebrows and small eyes and said in a trembling voice, I told you everything." The old man was Wan Xingjiang, Ho Yulin's martial uncle. He was as intimidating as a lion or a tiger. He asked coldly, "Really? Think about it again. Think about what your father told you about old Nanny Chiu." I. Li Wanquan looked at Ho Yulin helplessly, only to find that Ho Yulin was admiring his silver jewelry and didn't care about it at all. His body and mind trembled as his thoughts raced. He remembered something and blurted it out. My father told me that she's actually very rich. She's a monster. After listening to Li Wanquan, Wan Xingjiang looked at his martial nephew and said thoughtfully, "Old Nanny Chiu might have some supernatural ability to escape from the surveillance. I'll go and check again. There should be some clues left." "Yulin, you split into 2 groups. One group keeps an eye on Lu Cheng and the other group doesn't hide anything. Follow the Jingfa school. If we don't find anything today, we won't get anything." "Yes, martial uncle," Ho Yulin said with a heavy heart. While the 2 groups of people were frantically searching for Yan Zhika, Lu Cheng was sitting in front of the desk in the room, video chatting with Yan Zhika on the computer. The 2 of them didn't mention the fighting formula or the possible upheaval outside. Instead, they chatted about the interesting things the girl had encountered in the past few days as she settled down, went shopping, and registered for classes. They also shared the customs of different countries and regions. Just then, Lu Cheng's phone rang. A call came in. He picked it up and saw that it was his master. Thus, he made a hand gesture to little fairy and chose to accept the call. "Hello, master, what's the matter?" Lu Cheng could vaguely guess the purpose of this call, so he pretended to be at a loss and asked. Geezer chuckled and said, "You seem to have a lot of free time. Are you not anxious at all? Both sides have sent experienced experts over. Maybe Daxing Temple and the others will be involved. The military can't wait any longer. They plan to take over this matter. They asked you to stay aside and watch. Don't interfere." "Sure." Lu Cheng answered in a relaxed tone, which made Yen Jika burst into laughter on the screen. She pursed her lips and looked at him sideways. "SSS, you brat, something's not right. Cough, cough, are you hiding something from me, your master? Are you really not anxious? Aren't you afraid that the fighting formula will fall into the hands of others? Are you really willing to be completely outclassed by the military?" "I'm not anxious." "Why should I be anxious?" Lu Cheng answered with a smile. "I've already mastered the fighting formula." Pfft. Cough, cough, cough. Geezer seemed to have taken a sip of wine and spat out something. After a while, he said, "When did you find the fighting formula?" Not only did he find it, but he also mastered it. If it weren't for the dignity of a master, this old man would have asked a bunch of questions. Lu Cheng briefly explained the matter from beginning to end. He didn't even hide the fact that he wanted to see the military make a fool of themselves. However, he didn't mention the abnormality of the Jindan. After all, his master had always acted like he didn't care much about it. "You really do have an affinity with the 9 words formula." Geezer sighed and chuckled. "It's good that you didn't mention it. Those guys are so arrogant. Damn, master, you're a respected senior. How can you have the same bad thoughts as a child like me?" Lu Cheng complained. He chuckled and said, "Master, you have to tell me about the military's reaction." He didn't have to wait here for a few days. Jingyan Ancient City was such a big place that 2 or 3 days was the limit. It was hard to say when the military would realize something was wrong. "Hey, you little brat, you're really asking for a beating. Go back and rest, then come to Wiyue province. The fighting formula still needs to be given to the military. You have to get the Emperor Yen force as soon as possible. Try to complete the sublimation of the 2 forces before you transform." Geezer smiled satisfactorily and instructed. "Yes, master." Lu Cheng answered cheerfully. When he hung up, he saw Yen Jika covering her mouth and giggling. "Cheng, you two are indeed master and disciple. They really do have a tacit understanding in certain aspects." Lu Cheng deliberately squinted at her. "Ku, are you mocking me for being as unreliable as my master?" Yen Jika turned her eyes and smiled. Her right hand made a phone call gesture. "Hello, is this Coach Shi? Your disciple said you're unreliable. Hurry up and get rid of this evil creature." Lu Cheng silently added the second half of the sentence for his wife. After the girl went to bed, he stood up and began to pack his luggage. He had no doubt that the military could find old Nanny Chiu. Large local forces might have 2 or 3 inhuman mighty ones and many Dan stage masters, so they couldn't be underestimated. However, their numbers were too small, and their members were biased and monotonous. Unlike the military, they could find people who were good at fighting and good at tracking. That was why they had the confidence to not show up and watch their game with a smile. Under such circumstances, how could old Nanny Chiu, who was only a dabbler in concealment, escape? At 2:30 in the afternoon, 2 strong men, one tall and one short, directly broke into number 15 Wanha Street, ignoring the surveillance around them. Fang Fakue and Wan Xingjiang, who had returned in vain in the morning, hurried over with Huang Zihua and Ho Yulin. They were on high alert and looked on indifferently. The 2 men kept a straight face and didn't care about the gazes on them. They searched carefully from outside to inside. After repeating the same thing over and over again, they suddenly stopped in their tracks and stopped somewhere in the living room. They looked at each other and nodded slightly. The tall man suddenly squatted down and pounded the ground with his right hand as if he was pounding medicine. Bam! Orange-red flames gathered in his hand and exploded when he pounded the ground, creating a shockwave that penetrated inside. Inhuman. Fang Fakue and Wan Xingjiang's pupils shrank, and their expressions became more solemn. Where did this inhuman mighty one come from? Ice God sect? That's not right. He used fire. Just as the hearts of the two groups of people slowly sank, the ground that was hit by the tall man suddenly softened, as if it had turned into a swamp. A slightly pale and wrinkled hand suddenly stretched out, leading to an old woman that everyone was familiar with. Her expression was gloomy as she muttered to herself, "You're right. I still couldn't escape, old Nanny Cho." She didn't escape at all. She had been hiding underground all this time. Huang Zihua and Ho Yulan were stunned at first, and then they were filled with regret. She actually had such a supernatural ability and means. If we had thought of this earlier, we wouldn't have been beaten to the ground by these two mighty ones. The tall man and the short man looked at each other and showed a relaxed and complacent smile. The tall man turned to old Nanny Chio and said, "We can leave the rest of your business to the police. But where is the object with the word Do inscribed on it?" Old Nanny Chio looked at him strangely, and then she laughed. "Someone has taken it away." "Who? Who took it?" The tall man and the short man's smiles froze as they asked anxiously. Fang Fakue and the others were stunned and looked at each other. "Someone came earlier?" "Who? Who?" Old Nanny Cho thought for a while and said, "A young man of medium height, wearing black clothes. He looks quite energetic. He came here last night." Came here last night. A name suddenly popped up in everyone's mind. Lu Cheng. After getting rid of the surveillance, Lu Cheng got on the bus leaving Jingyun Ancient City. It didn't take long for him to receive a call from his master and know what had happened there. Although it wasn't detailed enough, it was easy to imagine that he was amused for 5 minutes and typed a long message to Yenjika. At this moment, he suddenly thought of something. He clicked on the military's Rapid March, who was in charge of contacting him. Scratching head and smiling expression, "Can you do me a favor? I still owe old Nanny Cho 600 yuan for the jade pendant. Can you help me? I'll transfer the money to you via QQ." He was quite nervous when he sent the message, expecting a reply of F*CK your mother. But Rapid March was quite restrained. After a few seconds of silence, he replied with one word, "Okay." Lu Cheng heaved a sigh of relief and looked up. He happened to see the young couple he met on the way to the bus. They were also going back today. Lu Cheng looked around and found that there were no more seats connected to each other. He stood up leisurely, pushed his black-rimmed glasses, and waved at them with a smile. "Come on, sit here. I'll let you." Seeing his bright and friendly smile, the young couple looked at each other in surprise and felt that there were more good people in this world. After staying at home for a few days, Lu Cheng, whose longing had almost turned into impulsiveness, set off on his journey again. He flew to Wiyue province to see his master. "Give me the item of the fighting formula later and familiarize yourself with the illustration of the ice spirit force," said Gizershur casually. "Oh, by the way, do you want to participate in a competition? The champion's prize is more than 5 million yuan. "What competition?" Lu Cheng, who was eager to make money, asked. He couldn't practice the fighting formula with the jade pendant, but he could write one for the military since he had deepened his understanding. As for the effect and how long it would take for the jade pendant to lose its charm, that was another matter altogether. Gizershur laughed. "The King of Youth tournament of 4 countries doesn't include our country. It's not broadcasted in our country either. This time, we're invited to participate in the competition with 4 wild cards. Young fighters under the age of 23 who aren't physical invulnerability. If you want to participate and use a different style of fighting to complete your transformation, I can help you get a spot." "When? Which countries?" Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat. Dongying, Miluo, Xinxiang, and Nanjing. August 12 to August 27, Gizershur said with a smile. Other than the champion, the top 8 also have a lot of prize money. I don't know if Peng Liyun and Renli will go. Miluo and Nanjing used to be vassals of China and had deep ties with China. Okay. Lu Cheng nodded. He looked at Gizershur and said seriously, Master, I want to participate. Chapter 448. Sure. Gizershur thought for a moment and added, Don't embarrass me. Miluo, Xinxiang, and Nanjing were the places where he had spent most of his time between the war-torn zones and China. He had plenty of acquaintances and friends. Master, do you have so little confidence in me? Lu Cheng lampooned. He knew Shi Jiangwo's pride was at work again. After a dozen seconds of silence, Lu Cheng asked curiously, Master, what kind of young experts are there in these 4 countries? How would I know? Why would an old man like me care about these juniors? Gizershur replied with a look of disdain. Anyway, there are definitely Inhumans, but not many of them. Alright, hurry up and give me the fighting formula. Okay. Lu Cheng had already observed the layout of his senior sister's house. As soon as he finished speaking, he bounced into the study. He unfolded the rice paper, pressed it with a paperweight, picked up the brush, and dipped it in ink. He took a deep breath, calmed his heart, and focused his mind. In his mind, he sketched out every stroke of the fighting character. Explosiveness, strength, dominance, vigor, and an unyielding spirit leaped out. His wrist hovered and the brush pressed down. The ink burned brightly as if it was about to burst out of the white paper and soar into the sky. When he was done, Lu Cheng nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the spirited ink. This is much better than my usual signature. However, Meng Qi's energy, qi, spirit and will had not yet reached the level of connecting with heaven and earth. The charm of the depiction could not be stabilized as time passed. At most 3 months, at least 1 month, this Do character could no longer be used for visualization and practice. It could only be like the Qian character he wrote for Wang Su, suppressing certain emotions with the remaining feelings until it completely returned to normal after a few years. Anyway, I'll just write it for them when it's no longer effective. Besides, with the Queen of Thought and the Divine Enchanter of Sin Flames level, they should be able to master it within a month. Lu Cheng's thoughts wandered. He picked up the rice paper on the table, walked into the living room, and handed it to Gizershur with a smile. Master, this is the fighting formula. That's it? Gizershur asked in astonishment. Where's the fighting formula I got from old Nanny Cho? From his expression, Lu Cheng interpreted the meaning of, "You're King kidding me." He felt embarrassed and smiled. Master, old Nanny Cho's item is half broken. I restored the charm by myself, just like how I comprehended the attainment formula from the notes of Shushan study. As he spoke, he scrolled through his phone and found the photo he had taken for Yenjika. He had left the jade pendant at home and planned to bring it to Songqing in September. When he went to America, he would give it to his little fairy as a souvenir. Gizershur glanced at it, coughed twice, and resumed his, "I've seen everything" attitude. Like I said, you and the 9 words formula are connected by fate. You can say that the Longhu immortal passed it on to you. As he spoke, he put away Lu Cheng's fighting formula and changed the topic. Since you're here, you can go through the formalities and get a visa to America. Once the quota is approved, we'll deal with the King of Youth League. For the next few days, you should train hard here and suppress the transformation. Try to grasp the basics of the visualization of ice spirit force as soon as possible. Speaking of this, he took out a rolled-up atlas from his pocket and said jokingly, "This is my legacy. This is a memento of your master when I was at my peak. Don't lose it, you brat." Originally, I was going to lend you grandmasters for you to visualize, but after thinking about it for a while, martial arts have evolved for so many years. His comprehension, is a little unsuitable. It's better to use mine. Master, you're already able to make a visualization atlas that can be handed down from generation to generation? Lu Qing exclaimed in both astonishment and admiration. Isn't that obvious? Back then, I was only one step away from entering the forbidden area. Geyser eyes were filled with pride. Lu Qing didn't hide his admiration and reached out to take the atlas. As soon as he held it, he felt that the paper that carried the visualization of ice spirit force was so light that it seemed weightless. It was like the emptiness of nothingness that couldn't even retain a trace of heat. All that was left was absolute and eternal coldness, darkness, and loneliness. At this moment, Lu Cheng's thoughts seemed to have drifted into the boundless coldness without a trace of light. After some time, he came back to his senses and saw his master's smiling face. Ice Spirit Holy Light Atlas. Ice Spirit Holy Light Atlas. Lu Qing nodded slightly and unfolded the atlas in his hand. He saw that it was filled with flowing sparkling light. The light against the darkness was dreamy, beautiful, and pure, but it gave off a feeling of loneliness, darkness, and extreme coldness. Geyser smiled and said, Ice Spirit Force will be formed when the Ice Spirit Force is connected to the Ice Spirit Holy Light diagram. When the transformation is completed, the force will be close to instinct. Only the Ice Spirit Holy Light diagram is needed, which can be used together with the eruption of Dan Force. Lu Qing took a deep breath and felt the joy of finally coming into contact with top-level martial arts. This wasn't something that could be mastered easily. It couldn't be mastered in 10 to 20 minutes like the 9 words formula. It required a certain amount of time to succeed. For this, he had to suppress the transformation of his root pulp. If he had known, he would have practiced Ice Spirit Force and Emperor Yen Force in advance. However, Master probably didn't expect him to complete the crucial breakthrough so quickly and reach the inhuman stage. Sigh, was it because of my exaggeration that Master was unreliable? Lu Qing repented for 2 minutes. In the next few days, he only went out to handle the procedures. Most of his free time was spent studying and comprehending the Ice Spirit Holy Light Atlas. Based on his understanding of the cold and his 2 years of experience in the ice sect, he gradually gained some insights. After settling the procedures for leaving the country, Lu Qing finally got his hands on the Emperor Yen Atlas before the 4-nation tournament. Its charm faded quickly, the kind that wouldn't take more than 10 days. It seemed to be a little revenge from the military. This atlas was the exact opposite of the Ice Spirit Holy Light Atlas. Although it was only a piece of paper, it felt heavy when held in one's hand. It was as though countless dust particles had accumulated on it. When it finally exceeded the critical point, it collapsed and ignited everything, spewing out unimaginably hot flames. On the atlas was a drawing of a god wearing a tall crown and ancient robes. The core was a very dense mass that spread out layers of flames of different colors. They formed a ceremonial robe, majestic and terrifying. Combined with the Prairie Fire Atlas from before, he could master Emperor Yen Force. Alright, brat, hurry up and practice. Once you've mastered both ice and fire, you can undergo the transformation, Geyser instructed. Geyser reminded him, go to Huahai tomorrow and meet up with the others at Haidong Airport. This is the contact number. Although it's an individual competition, we still have to go together as a team. Hey, if you don't go, you won't understand. The host this time was Xinjiang's capital, Fulua. Master, who else is participating? Lu Qing inquired curiously. He wondered if there was anyone he knew. Geyser chuckled, then suddenly put on a straight face and said, I didn't ask. Lu Qing tactfully returned to his room and packed his luggage. Then, he took out his phone and sent a message to Yen Jika. I'm going to Huahai. Who would have thought that my first overseas trip would be to Xinjiang instead of America? The message was like a stone sinking into the ocean. It was midnight there. Lu Qing quietly watched for a few minutes, then felt a surge of longing that was hard to get rid of. After that, he contacted the other party, confirmed the details, and booked the high-speed train ticket. When it was almost night time, Yen Jika woke up and said, Qing, I can't watch your match live again. Good thing we can find online resources in America. Huh, that's good. I can't understand much of my opponent's information. I'm a little unsure. Lu Qing replied humbly, but his spirits were lifted. The next day, he tried to understand Emperor Yan's force, but without a doubt, he didn't gain much. After breakfast, Lu Qing carried his luggage and headed to the high-speed train station. He arrived at Haidong Airport before noon. At 2:00 in the afternoon, he met the leader of this competition, Zhong Ningtao, at the departure hall. All right, wait a few more minutes. They said they'll be here soon. Zhong Ningtao had a slicked-back hairstyle. He was of average height and had a kind smile. Okay. Lu Qing didn't rush to ask who else was there. He took out his phone and reported to his wife. Meet up. Looking forward to teammates. Just as he sent the message, he sensed something and turned to the other side. He saw a young man in a white t-shirt and casual pants walking over with his luggage. He had a clean smile and a leisurely temperament. His eyes seemed to have just returned from a long journey. It was Peng Liyun. Chapter 449. Peng Liyun. He's going as expected. It's really the King of Youth League this time. The thought flashed across Lu Cheng's mind. He raised his right hand and was about to greet him. He wanted to exchange some pleasantries about Peng Liyun's condition but remembered that he was the one who had caused Peng Liyun's most serious injury. Greeting him was akin to taunting and mocking him. He smiled and squeezed out a word. Hi. His opponent from a few months ago had suddenly become his teammate. Hello. Peng Liyun approached and waved calmly. I thought you might come. Lu Qing laughed and said, to broaden my horizons and strengthen my foundation. After he finished speaking, he waited for Peng Liyun's response. However, all of a sudden, an inexplicable silence filled the air. Lu Qing looked over in puzzlement, only to find the refreshed and clean Peng Liyun standing there. His eyes were unfocused, as if he had gone on a mental journey in an instant. He didn't stumble at all and completely ignored Lu Qing. This is King awkward. Lu Qing, who lacked experience in interacting with others, couldn't help but laugh dryly. He turned to Zhong Ningtao and pretended to be normal. He's just like that. Don't mind him. Anyway, it's very consistent with the rumors. Zhong Ningtao shrugged his shoulders like an American and replied with a smile, I know. Hence, he wasn't in a hurry to greet him. Lu Qing was about to change the topic and ask about the other two teammates when Peng Liyun suddenly recovered from the blackout state. He looked at Lu Qing thoughtfully and said, I'll participate in the nationals again. Lu Qing nodded and replied with a smile, me too. As soon as he finished, he saw Peng Liyun sitting next to him. His eyes were wandering again. His phone is just for show. I heard that he wants to play games too. Lu Qing thought to himself. He saw the door open at the top of the nearest elevator. A young man with long hair and headphones walked out. He was also a martial artist that Lu Qing knew, and Chaoyang, who had joined the Shanghai Club and was personally taught by the Queen of Thought. And Chaoyang glanced at them and said with a surprised smile, You're not going for a competition, right? You're going to challenge them. The two real heavenly sons of China were going for a competition together. Before Lu Qing could answer, Zhong Ningtao, who was sitting on the other side of him, said with a smile, That's good, that's good. That's why they dared to give us wild cards. Otherwise, why didn't they invite us in the past few years? The Japanese are so prideful. If they don't have any confidence, they'd rather play by themselves behind closed doors. Why would they take the initiative to find someone to ruin their business? Are there any experts over there? Lu Qing asked curiously. He had investigated the situation of the martial artists in Japan, Xinjiang, and other countries. However, due to the language barrier, he could only look at a few external websites. His understanding was quite superficial, and he could only have a general impression. Zhong Ningtao said with a smile, Strong is only relative. This competition is open to anyone under the age of 23. It's normal for every country to have one or two inhuman geniuses, but in terms of age and potential, they can't compare to you. We've been keeping an eye on them and collecting information. I've already sorted it out and will send it to you when we arrive at Fulua. Okay. And Chaoyang nodded calmly. After joining the Shanghai Club, under the personal tutelage of the Queen of Thought, he had made rapid progress. He felt confident that he would be able to break through to the inhuman stage in the next year, which was before he was 23 years old. Therefore, he did not have any psychological trauma when encountering such an enemy. Lu Cheng's blood was boiling with excitement. He couldn't wait to experience the martial arts of other countries and spar with their geniuses. Moreover, due to communication issues, it would be difficult to understand each other in this competition like in China. There would be more surprises and surprises. Well, if the information provided by the leader wasn't detailed enough, he could ask Unparalleled Dragon King in the group later to see if he had more information. Sounds interesting. Peng Liyun had come back from his days at some point and said with interest. Hearing his words, Lu Qing couldn't help but complain to himself. Could this guy be a cyborg? He's in power-saving mode when he's not fighting or learning. Well, it's very possible. They weren't familiar with each other, and they weren't extroverted like Kai Zhongming. After chatting for a few minutes, Peng Liyun went back to daydreaming. And Chaoyang put on his headphones and focused on enjoying the music. Lu Cheng and the leader, Zhong Ningtao, were left looking at each other. Luckily, Lu Cheng was someone who had been influenced by Talker for a long time. He didn't let the atmosphere become awkward. After waiting for a while, the fourth member still didn't appear. Zhong Ningtao stood up and looked around. He didn't find anything. Should I call and ask? Oh right, who is it? Lu Qing finally asked the question that he had forgotten. You guys know each other, Renli. Zhong Ningtao took out his phone and wondered if he should urge the genius girl. Renli? This is really the strongest team. Lu Cheng was shocked. He thought that Renli, who had almost completed her transformation, would focus on stabilizing herself and wouldn't join in the fun. Who knew that she would join in? Well, the inhuman stage belonged to the internal division of the Dan stage. The martial arts they practiced were not much different from when they were at 6th pin. Renli had already mastered what she needed to master. As for what she hadn't mastered, she wouldn't be able to master in such a short time. Just like himself, he had already mastered all the martial arts below physical invulnerability of the ice sect. Even though there were more than 100 Dan stage kung fu styles, there were only 20 to 30 styles that were actually needed to be practiced. The rest were all created by predecessors and improved upon. Furthermore, the improved versions were re-recorded as new styles. That was why there were so many kung fu styles. For example, the 26th style of the ice sect, ice burning, was an improved version of the 112th style, snow burning, and was placed at the top of the list when the kung fu was rewritten. Renli? And Chaoyang took off his headphones. He was surprised and amused. Leader, you should give her a call. Otherwise, we won't be able to wait. As one of Renli's old rivals, he knew her better than Lu Cheng and Zhong Ningtao. On the other side, Peng Liyun had also come back to his senses. He nodded in agreement. All right. Zhong Ningtao dialed the number. After a few seconds, he heard Renli's voice. Hello? Hello, Renli. I'm Zhong Ningtao, your leader. I contacted you 2 days ago. Where are you now? After introducing himself, Zhong Ningtao went straight to the point. After a moment of silence, a calm voice came from the phone. Leader, I think I'm lost. Lost. Zhong Ningtao was dumbfounded. He almost forgot to think. After a few seconds, he said hurriedly, hurry up and ask the people next to you to confirm your current location. He knew that Renli had a bad sense of direction, but he didn't expect her to be this bad. After a moment, Renli answered without any anxiety or anger, they said I'm in T2. They said. Zhong Ningtao's mouth twitched. He hurriedly said, we're in T1. Hurry up and come over. Don't, no. and Chaoyang and Peng Liyun tried to stop her. Only Lu Cheng was stunned. Was Ren Li's sense of direction terminal? Huh? Zhong Ningtao turned around blankly and looked at the two who spoke. Leader, you should go and pick her up. Otherwise, she might have left the airport. And Chaoyang smiled helplessly. Having a bad sense of direction wasn't scary. It was knowing that they had a bad sense of direction, but they were confident and took the initiative to lead the way. Unfortunately, Ren Li belonged to the latter. Okay. Zhong Ningtao was speechless. He asked Ren Li to ask for her current location and search for her. After about 20 minutes, Lu Cheng and the others finally saw Ren Li in an orange t-shirt and denim shorts. Hello. The delicate doll-like girl nodded politely. Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun, and Chaoyang looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. They then greeted her back. Lu Cheng took the opportunity and sent a message to Yan Zhika with a proud expression. My teammates this time are Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Chaoyang. The strongest heavenly team. At this time, it was still midnight in America. Once everyone had gathered, they used their passports to get their tickets and queued up to go through the security check. They waited for half an hour in the VIP lounge before boarding the plane. Since they were in the first class, they were the first to enter. Then, Lu Cheng saw Ren Li dragging her suitcase and staring straight ahead. She didn't look back and didn't even look at the seat number beside her. Heh. He twitched his mouth and reminded her, Ren Li, here. As Lu Cheng spoke, Peng Liyun, and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao also stopped her. Ren Li stopped and looked at where they were pointing. She showed an embarrassed expression and ran back with small steps to put her luggage in the seat above. After she sat down, Lu Cheng glanced at the terminally ill young lady. He then looked at Chaoyang, who was wearing headphones and had entered his own world, and Peng Liyun, who was sitting on his left. He didn't know what he was thinking, but he completely ignored the stewardess greetings. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. Damn it, I can't be the only normal person in this heavenly team, right? These three guys don't seem reliable no matter how I look at them. Thinking of this, he picked up his phone and complained to his wife. At this moment, Yan Zhika suddenly popped up and replied, Hey. Huh, Brother Cheng, you can do it. Pfft, why are you awake? Don't delay your classes tomorrow. Lu Cheng replied happily. Can't I wake up in the middle of the night? Yan Zhika replied. The two of them immediately started chatting happily. After a few minutes, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Chaoyang all looked at Lu Cheng, who was smiling and playing with his phone. They all had the same expression that Lu Cheng had when he looked at them just now. After successfully arriving at Fulua, the capital of Xinjiang, Lu Cheng and the others got on the bus and arrived at the hotel. After checking in, Ren Li took the lead and led the way to the restaurant. She was grabbed by the leader, Zhong Ningtao. The consequence of Zhong Ningtao grabbing her shoulder was that she used absolute reaction and threw him to the ground. While Lu Cheng was mourning for him, on the other side of the hotel lobby, two men who looked like Japanese were observing them and comparing them to the photos on their phones. They are the strongest ones, said one of the Japanese men in a low voice. Chapter 450. I'm sorry. After throwing Zhong Ningtao to the ground with a suplex, Ren Li came back to her senses. She clasped her hands together and apologized repeatedly. Luckily, she wasn't the kind of person who would go all out and hold back her strength. Otherwise, with their skills, Zhong Ningtao would have broken a few bones. At this moment, he only felt a little dizzy. Rubbing his sore spots, he got up slowly and forced a smile. It's nothing. I've been through a lot too. Oh my, this girl looks so harmless, but she's actually so scary. Lu Cheng leaned over and glanced at the opposite side of the hall from the corner of his eye. He lowered his voice and said, Leader, there seem to be two Japanese looking at us. In the eyes of other countries, Chinese and Japanese were very similar and hard to differentiate. Single eyelids and short stature weren't important labels. However, to the two countries, they were easy to distinguish. It was as though there was a distinct feeling between them. It's nothing. They like to collect information like this, explained Zhong Mingtao. They are very serious in their work, but also very rigid. Our situation was reported to the organizing committee in the morning. Xinjiang's people didn't even come to confirm it, but they did. After a few words, he looked at the watch on his wrist and said, "There's no time difference. It's 6:30 now. Go back to your room and rest for a while. We'll gather here at 7 and go out to find food. We don't have anything to do for the next few days, so we can relax and have fun while waiting for the competition to start." "Oh right, what do you want to eat? Any suggestions?" "Anything," Peng Liyun answered casually. His gaze swept across the golden Buddha statues in the hotel and he fell into deep thought. "Anything is fine." And Chaoyang pulled a suitcase with one hand and put the other in his pocket. With his headphones on, he leisurely observed the exotic guests coming and going. "I'm not a picky eater, really." Renli caught on to the main point. Zhong Ningtao looked at Lu Qing, sadly, and was delighted to see him take out his phone and open the review app. "Leader, I'll look around and see if there's any good food nearby. We can discuss it later. When traveling, you can't let down good food. Anyway, Ku and I are the kind of bored tourists who value each other more than good food more than local customs, and local customs more than beautiful scenery. Okay, add me on WeChat." Zhong Ningtao was very touched. Most of the time, Lu Cheng's WeChat was just for show. But recently, the non-students he knew seemed to like it more, so he gradually got used to it. He even started to feel that it was quieter and quieter, so he wanted Ku to use it more often. After scanning the QR code, they escorted Renli into the elevator. They didn't leave until they saw her enter the apartment. Lu Qing put down his luggage, sat by the bed, and browsed through the delicacies around him. After a few minutes of discussion with the team leader, they decided on a Xinjiang cuisine. After doing all this, he found that Zhong Ningtao had already sent the opponent's information to his mailbox. He downloaded it and browsed it. Kori Karasawa, 22 years old. Successor of the Shinzai sect in Japan. 6th Dan black belt, equivalent to a 5th pin in China. Developed Qi at the end of last year, equivalent to the inhuman stage. Hailed as a beautiful girl genius that appears once every 3,000 years in Japan. However, they always like to exaggerate. Compared to Peng Liyun at the same age, she's still lacking. There were many sects in Japanese martial arts. Under the auspices of the country, the white belt represented amateurs, while the black belt represented samurai. 9th Dan was the highest, and 1st Dan was the lowest. Among them, 8th Dan and 9th Dan were equivalent to the top 3 ranks in China. At the end of last year, 21.5 years old, almost at the inhuman stage. What a formidable opponent. Lu Qing thought as he continued scrolling. He saw Kori Karasawa's photo and the introduction of the Shinzai sect. She was indeed a pretty girl. She wasn't very tall, just a little over 1.6 meters. She had baby fat on her face, round and adorable. Lu Qing scanned through and looked to the back. Muko Yamashita, almost 24 years old. Founder of the extreme Hadu sect in Japan. 5th Dan black belt. Developed Hadu in May, equivalent to the inhuman stage. This was a tall man with long arms. He had thick eyebrows, rugged looks, and shocking muscles. Waku, a direct disciple of Xinjiang country's Theravada Buddhism, an ascetic monk with the title of Arhat. At the age of 23, he has already mastered the 16 insight wisdom, to the walking insight wisdom, which is equivalent to the inhuman stage. Vagar, son of Miluo's warlord. Possesses the supernatural ability of thunder and lightning. Cultivates Miluo's martial arts and is extremely domineering. 23.5 years old. As Miluo doesn't have a standard evaluation system, his strength can only be said to be on par with Kori Karasawa. He is one of the 2 most likely to win this competition. Banam, representative of Nanjing. At such a young age, he is already the sect leader of Jia Hequan. Vicious in his attacks, ruthless to others and even more ruthless to himself. Their martial arts path is similar to our country's. He has just broken through to the inhuman stage, 22 years old. Xinjiang, Miluo and Nanjing are close to war-torn areas. The political situation in the country is often unstable. One has a king, one is a warlord, and one is a military government. Therefore, the status of women in the country is lower, and it isn't easy for them to practice martial arts. Lu Qing swiped his finger and flipped through the pages quickly. He remembered the looks of the three of them. Waku was sallow and skinny. He was barefooted and wore a red robe. He didn't seem to be any different from most of the ascetic monks. However, his eyes were deep and dark, as though they were hiding a pure land of self. Vagar was wearing a blue general's uniform. He was tall and strong with a cold face. Banam was less than 1.7 meters tall. His skin was tanned and as strong as steel. His wrists and legs were wrapped in white bandages. Other than the five of them, Zhong Ningtao also listed a few martial artists with potential from the 4 countries. Lu Qing took a quick glance and took his phone with international data package. He pocketed his wallet and took the elevator back to the first floor. He waited in the lobby for his teammates to meet up. This time, Zhong Ningtao didn't make any mistakes. He knocked on Ren Li's door and led her down personally. He didn't want this young lady to get lost in the sea of people in the hotel again. Let's eat here. Zhong Ningtao showed Peng Liyun and the rest the name of the restaurant that he and Lu Qing had decided on. Okay. And Chaoyang and the rest went with the flow and didn't have any objections. When they were about to leave the hotel, Lu Qing couldn't help but ask when he saw the tanned, short, and skinny Xinjiang people outside. Leader, do you speak Xinjiang language? Zhong Ningtao looked at him, then at Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Chaoyang who had the same question. He gave a look that said, how can you ask such a childish question? I don't know. Don't know. Lu Qing, who originally thought that he and the leader were the most reliable in the team, was dumbfounded. Even the usually calm Ren Li and Peng Liyun were stunned for a moment. Don't know, don't worry. Everyone here more or less knows English. I'm a professional. Zhong Ningtao wiped his swept-back hair and smiled proudly. Look, didn't I arrange everything properly when we took a taxi to check in? That's true. Lu Qing heaved a sigh of relief. And Chaoyang pondered for a few seconds, then suddenly opened his mouth and asked directly, Leader, you've been to Xinjiang before, right? Zhong Ningtao gave a dry laugh and answered sincerely, nope. Then, he added, don't worry. I'm on good terms with the people in the embassy here. That's why they sent me here. Lu Qing, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Chaoyang looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. This might be a little unreliable. Why don't we just stay in the hotel and eat instant noodles? Under Zhong Ningtao's persuasion, and because they were skilled and bold, they continued on their journey. Following the navigation on the map, they found a restaurant about 700 meters away that had a rich Xinjiang atmosphere. The architecture here was influenced by Buddhist aesthetics. There were many sculptures, and they liked to paint. It was quite unique. Click, click, click. Lu Qing took out his phone and took a few pictures. He sent them to Yan Jika, hoping that she would feel what he felt when she woke up. Click, click, click. Ren Li was also taking pictures. Half of it was the scenery, and the other half was a selfie. After a while, she was about to leave the restaurant in the opposite direction and fly away. Luckily, Peng Liyun noticed in time and stopped her. Click, click, click. And Chaoyang held the digital camera and focused on it as if he was sculpting a piece of art. Why aren't you taking pictures? Zhong Ningtao leaned towards Peng Liyun curiously. Then, he realized something and said, that's right. Someone with a carefree personality like you wouldn't like to take pictures. He would rather be in a daze. Peng Liyun tilted his head and looked at him. He said calmly, the camera is broken. Zhong Ningtao's mouth twitched. He decided to talk to Lu Qing. He had just taken 2 steps when he saw Lu Qing turn around and smile at Xiaoyang, who had just finished taking pictures. Can you share some pictures with me later? I didn't take very good pictures. You didn't take very good pictures? Then why did you take so many pictures just now? Zhong Ningtao took a deep breath and walked to the restaurant. With his fluent English, he managed to get a table for 6. Lu Qing sat down, picked up the menu and opened it. He was surprised to find a Chinese translation. So considerate. And Xiaoyang said sincerely beside him. There were many people around and the environment was very noisy. At least a third of the tourists here are from our country. How can we not have a Chinese menu? Zhong Ningtao said with a smile. He waved his hand to the waiter and started to order. Halfway through the order, the petite girl with brown skin suddenly said a lot of things. Lu Qing and the others looked at each other. Can you speak English? Zhong Ningtao asked in English. The waiter nodded and said a lot more. Lu Qing felt that with his hearing, he could only understand a few words. Leader, what does he mean? Renli pulled Zhong Ningtao and asked in a low voice out of habit. Zhong Ningtao replied in English with a confused face, I don't understand, this waiter's English accent is too strong. It's too local. I'm dumbfounded, let me try. Good student Peng Lian started to use English. However, after a while of gesticulating, he still failed to communicate. And Xiaoyang and Renli were eager to give it a try. They both used exam-oriented English to try to help, but they all failed miserably. As their last hope, Lu Qing took a deep breath and planned to show the oral English he had practiced for Ku. After a while, the waiter was at a loss. Just as they were about to use the translation software, the girl asked timidly, Do you speak Chinese? Lu Qing, Peng Liyun and the others all understood this sentence. They were stunned for a while before they blurted out, You speak Chinese? Yes, my father is Chinese. There are a lot of Chinese tourists here. Staff who speak Chinese are very popular. The girl smiled and answered, feeling a little awkward. Lu Qing, Renli, Peng Liyun, and Xiaoyang and Zhong Ningtao, who were sweating from ordering food, looked at each other and suddenly burst into laughter. Their bodies were shaking non-stop and they were about to cry. They suddenly felt that the unfamiliarity and isolation between them had disappeared. Chapter 451. After laughing for a while, Zhong Ningtao picked up the menu again and ordered in Chinese according to the speed of their conversation. The petite waitress listened with a blank face. In the end, she smiled embarrassedly and said, Can you slow down? Too fast, too fast. I don't understand. Her Chinese expression was rather shaky. Okay. Lu Qing and the rest laughed. Zhong Ningtao slowed down his speech and described the dishes word by word. This time, the conversation was very smooth. Everyone understood what the waitress was trying to say. She thought that the customers had ordered too much and some dishes were not special, so there was no need to waste their appetite. But for Lu Qing and the rest, this was not a problem. They would only complain about too little, but not too much. Hence, they happily reached an agreement. Lu Qing, Peng Liyun, Renli, and Xiaoyang and Zhong Ningtao looked at each other and laughed at the same time when the brown-skinned waitress put away the menu, took notes and turned to leave. It's not easy to order in a foreign country. There were many customers in this restaurant, but the food was served quickly. Plates were placed in front of Lu Qing and the rest. No need to wait. Let's eat first. If we eat one plate, we won't be able to fit another plate. Zhong Ningtao glanced at the crowded table and picked up his chopsticks. Okay. Lu Qing, Renli, and Xiaoyang replied in unison. They unlocked their phones and aimed at the delicious food. We need to consecrate our food. Peng Liyun's chopsticks hovered for a moment. Just when Zhong Ningtao thought he was going to be the first to taste the food after the photo shoot, he smiled casually. Let's add each other on QQ or WeChat later. Huh? The rest were stunned. Remember to send me some photos. Peng Liyun looked straight ahead and replied with a smile. Compared to before, he was obviously more willing to talk and communicate. Let's just steal the photos. I'll post it, share it on WeChat and Weibo. And Chaoyang suggested, seriously. Peng Liyun picked up the ice water and drank a mouthful. He cleared his throat and said, actually, that's what I used to do. But they were not familiar with each other, so he felt a little embarrassed. Apart from her tendency to daydream, and lazy personality, the big devil is quite easy to get along with. Lu Qing laughed to himself, lowered his head, and sent the photos of the food to Yan Jika. He imitated her tone and said, I'm helping you to improve your appetite for breakfast. We're husband and wife, so you're welcome. Xingxiang's dishes were mostly lemon sour, with a wide range of sweet, sour, and spicy flavors. Their grilled fish and other delicacies were cooked with spices and leaves that were rarely seen in Lu Cheng and the rest. The first bite was strange, but after a few more bites, it seemed to be all right and had a unique style. The four big eaters, and Zhong Ningtao, who had a huge appetite, had refreshed the waiter's view of the world after just one meal. In the past, they had met people with appetites comparable to Peng Liyun and Renli, but they had never seen so many people gathered together at one table. In the end, the chefs, who felt that their culinary skills had been greatly affirmed, came to the front hall and sincerely greeted Lu Cheng and the rest. They also invited them to take photos as souvenirs. After paying the bill with his card, Zhong Mingtao remembered something. He opened his black briefcase and took out a few stacks of notes. Here's the Xingxiang shield. 30,000 per person. This is for your daily expenses. You can swipe your UnionPay card at most places, and there's a discount. 1 yuan in China could be exchanged for a little over 7 Xingxiang shields. Lu Qing took the money and looked at the colorful notes. Then he heard Zhong Ningtao say, you can go around here. This is a more prosperous area in Fulua. Renli, you have to follow them. No, follow me. You can't go alone. Also, you have morning exercises tomorrow, right? There's a quiet place on the left of the hotel. Renli, what time do you usually wake up? About 5:30, Renli volunteered. Leader, it's okay. I won't get lost during morning exercises. Zhong Ningtao looked at her deeply and said, I'll wake up at 5:30 as well. Before Renli could insist, he continued, there's a Xingxiang martial arts school nearby. Do you want me to book all the time in the morning? Yes. Lu Qing answered without hesitation. Peng Liyun, Renli, and Chaoyang also said in unison, their eyes shining with anticipation. You guys are really... Zhong Ningtao couldn't help but laugh. What a good kid focused on martial arts. They took a stroll and walked in a circle. Under the bright night sky, they found the hotel they were staying at and returned to their own rooms to do their own things. Lu Qing glanced at his phone. Seeing that Ke hadn't replied, he put it down slowly and turned on his computer. Using the information provided by Zhong Ningtao, he found the corresponding website and started watching the match videos of Kori Karasawa, Vagar, and other opponents. After skimming through, he found that the highlights weren't detailed enough. He unlocked his phone and found Unparalleled Dragon King in the group chat. He opened the chat box and typed, Old Dragon, are you there? Just say what you want, no need to ask if I'm there, replied Unparalleled Dragon King. Lu Qing scratched his head and said, do you have detailed information on Kori Karasawa, Muko Yamashita, Waku, Vagar, and Banam? Damn, you want to watch the King of Youth League? You know about this? Replied Unparalleled Dragon King with a shocked expression. Is it strange to know? Replied Lu Cheng with a confused expression. Strange, very strange. Replied Unparalleled Dragon King with a thumbs up. Our country's martial arts is too strong and the competition is fierce. After I returned to China, I found that other than the international arena and professional competitions of a few big countries, Everyone rarely pays attention to foreign martial arts and fighting. I didn't expect us to have a common interest. I just happened to be here. Lu Qing smiled through tears and admitted that he was just one of the big shots, in an attempt to dispel Unparalleled Dragon King's unnecessary excitement. Oh, you're in Fulua? Asked Unparalleled Dragon King with a sudden realization. He subconsciously thought that Schrodinger's tiger was traveling with his girlfriend after meeting her parents. On the way, he found out about the King of Youth League and wanted to take a look. Yes, replied Lu Cheng without hiding anything. Not bad, if I didn't prefer to stay at home, would have flown to Fulua, replied Unparalleled Dragon King. Unparalleled Dragon King, replied, laughing expression, alright, I'll send you a copy of the videos of those guys later. It's definitely better than what you can find yourself. If there's any behind-the-scenes footage or any details of the competition, you have to let me know immediately. Some of the matches can't be found. No problem, replied Lu Cheng with a wave. By the way, it seems like 4 wild cards were sent to our country this time. Did you see any mention of our 4 fighters on the posters and the pre-match program? Unparalleled Dragon King asked excitedly. You're right to ask me. Lu Qing replied with a snickering expression, I know, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, Lu Cheng and Chaoyang. *CK, they're not giving Xinjiang and the other countries a chance to survive. Why are they so confident in giving wild cards? Asked Unparalleled Dragon King in surprise. He thought it was good enough to have a heavenly son of the era leading the team. I'm not sure about that. I also want to know why, replied Lu Cheng with a shrug. Unparalleled Dragon King sent an excited expression. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the King of Youth League more and more. No, I have to tell little Chanya and little Fan. Let's talk more during this time. Sure, talk to you later. Lu Qing saw Yan Jika's reply. Sending delicious food early in the morning. Cheng, the boat of our friendship has capsized, said Yan Jika. So I fell into the river of love? Raised eyebrows and smirked expression. Who are you? I don't know you, replied Yan Jika. After flirting for a few minutes, Lu Qing started to talk about Peng Liyun and the others, completely unaware of what he was doing. I didn't expect them to be so easy to get along with. Speaking of this, Yan Jika sent an emoji of covering her mouth and laughing. Cheng, you've joined the national team. Yes, the national team under the age of 24. When some of the international team challenge tournaments were held, countries would form teams to participate. Of course, you could also form your own team. Time flew by as they chatted and laughed. Lu Qing said goodnight reluctantly and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, he found the place the leader had told him about and saw Peng Liyun and Chaoyang. He also saw Ren Li and Zhong Mingtao, who were late. After greeting each other, they each found a place to train. Lu Qing continued to cultivate Ice Spirit Force and Emperor Yen Force and made slight progress. After training and breakfast, they went to the Xinjiang boxing gym booked by Zhong Mingtao and started to train. Peng Liyun thought for a while and said, why don't we spar later? I can imitate Vagar's fighting style. He had seen the related videos. I'll try Xinjai Sect and Zahi boxing, said Ren Li. I'll imitate Waku, said Chaoyang. Lu Cheng was at a loss at first, then came to a realization. He smiled and said, then I can only work hard to be Muko Yamashita. This was the benefit of having strong teammates. Everyone could imitate opponents with different styles according to their own characteristics to increase the corresponding experience. After practicing for a while, Peng Liyun walked to the center of the gym. He swung his fists and legs a few times, creating electric sparks. Then, he looked at Lu Qing, Ren Li, and Chaoyang. He waved and smiled. Who's next? Just as the 4 wild cards were training hard, the round-faced Kori Karasawa and the thick-browed Muko Yamashita were also watching the competition videos of Lu Qing, Peng Liyun and the others. Not only them, but Vagar, Waku and Banam were also seriously studying the related videos in their spare time. Time flew. A few nights later, the King of Youth tournament officially kicked off. The 24 advanced martial artists, the 8 seeded fighters and the 4 wild cards would draw lots and fight each other. Chapter 452. The Xingxiang Stadium in Fulua was brightly lit and packed with people. It had the unique atmosphere of a crowded and passionate place. The competition will start with a double elimination format. There will be 1 round every day. Whoever loses 2 rounds will go home until the top 16 are left. Leader Zhong Ningtao explained the situation as he led Lu Qing, Peng Liyun and the rest to their predetermined seats. It's almost the same as the provincial youth tournament last year. Lu Qing nodded slightly. He observed the stadium as they walked and tried to be a good husband. Xingxiang was deeply influenced by the Buddhist culture. Golden statues of wisdom kings and arhats were placed around the venue. Some of them looked evil, some of them looked solemn, some of them looked bitter, and some of them had lowered eyebrows. Looking at them, one would inexplicably feel a sense of anxiety and trepidation. Under the suppression of these Buddha statues were 3 wide arenas in the shape of the Chinese character, Tri. There were many swastikas engraved around the arenas, giving off a sense of tranquility, illusion, and detachment. 1 inside and 1 outside. The combination of these 2 feelings seemed to be able to affect the emotions of the fighters in the arena. The work of a master. And Chaoyang was listening to music with his headphones on, but he controlled his voice so that it was no different from normal. Peng Liyun returned from his daydream. He glanced over and laughed softly. This is the home field advantage. Those Buddha statues and those swastikas were probably the work of the eminent monks of Southern Buddhism. They were the enhanced version of the forwarding formula that Lu Qing wrote for Wang Su. They were used to disrupt the minds and spirits of non-Theravada monks and create the most advantageous environment for themselves. Yeah. Renli took 2 steps forward and took a picture of the Buddha statues and the swastikas. She walked back to Zhong Ningtao, who looked like he was facing a formidable enemy. She said innocently, "Leader, I'm not blind. I can't see you guys. It's just a few steps. I won't get lost. It's always better to be safe than sorry." Zhong Ningtao replied earnestly. He felt exhausted from the past few days. Beside him, Lu Qing was sending the picture he just took to Yan Zhika and discussing the home field advantage with her. Ahem. Zhong Ningtao cleared his throat. We're about to enter the arena. Everyone, keep your spirits up. Oh right, the contestants who can enter this competition are mostly equivalent to rank 6 martial artists. All of you, be careful. Don't be too careless. These are all geniuses from their countries, or former geniuses. Okay. Lu Qing nodded solemnly, indicating that he understood. Theoretically speaking, he was only at the level of a top-notch rank 6. He had yet to truly step into the door of the inhuman stage and undergo a transformation. Therefore, when facing these strange contestants who did not know much about Kung Fu, they could not afford to be careless. Just as Peng Liyun was about to say something, the broadcast sounded. It was repeated in Xingxiang and English. It's our turn. Zhong Ningtao called out in a hurry. He straightened his back and stood in front of the team. Seeing this, and Chaoyang took off his earphones and hung them around his neck. Peng Liyun's gaze became more focused. Renli and Lu Qing silently switched their phones to silent mode and stuffed them into their pockets. After more than 10 seconds, the impassioned melody of the national anthem rose. Lu Qing and the rest, who were inexplicably excited, walked out of the passageway unhurriedly under Zhong Ningtao's lead. They entered the arena and headed for the VIP seats. Not long after he appeared in front of everyone, he suddenly felt a prickling sensation on his skin. Following the source of the prickling sensation, he saw a burly man with exaggerated muscles in the Japanese delegation. He was wearing a traditional samurai outfit and was looking at him with a deep gaze. Bam! Their gazes seemed to meet. Light gathered in Muko Yamashita's eyes, forming a white wave. It was so bright that Lu Qing felt as though he was looking at a strong light. He narrowed his eyes slightly and his pupils suddenly darkened. It was as though there was a boundless starry sky in his eyes. The scarlet sun and sparkling stars swallowed all the external light as it rotated slowly. At the same time, Ren Li's heart skipped a beat. She followed Lu Cheng's gaze and happened to see a beautiful girl in an elegant kimono with exquisite makeup. Her round face was cute, her eyes were like mirrors, and her aura was quiet and gentle. It was as though she was just an illusion. The current successor of Shinjai's sect, Kori Karasawa. Whoosh! A strong wind suddenly blew in the arena, blowing chaotically. No one knew where it came from and where it went. And Chaoyang also found inspiration and reacted as though he was reminded of the scenery. Instinctively, he turned his head and made eye contact with a skinny, yellow-robed monk in red robes. He felt his disgust and abandonment towards everything in the world. All illusions should be broken free from them. Water gushed out from his mind, containing a sense of vitality. It washed away and Chaoyang's melancholy and despair. What a powerful mental infection. And Chaoyang took a deep breath, retracted his gaze and looked at the other mighty ones. Beside him, Peng Liyun saw Vagar at first glance. He saw his cold face, his well-ironed blue general uniform and the dancing electric snakes in his eyes. Crackle. A strange sound was heard in midair. The lights in the Xingxiang Stadium dimmed for a moment before returning to their former glory. Lu Qing shifted his gaze away from Muko Yamashita. His footsteps swept past Kori Karasawa, Waku, and Vagar without the slightest hesitation. Feeling their unique aura, he relied on the secret assistance of the army formula and fighting formula to not be at a disadvantage. Finally, his gaze landed on the Nanjing delegation. He saw the tanned Bantam sitting with his arms crossed. He was looking at the four of them coldly, like a wild beast staring at its prey. The national anthem stopped. Lu Cheng and the rest returned to their seats and sat down, no longer looking around. Vagar, Muko Yamashita and the rest also retracted their gazes. I really don't know what the Japanese Xingxiang are thinking, giving us 4 wild cards, said Chaoyang softly as he ran his fingers through his half-length hair. Even with 4 countries combined, there would only be 5 Inhumans below the age of 24. Hearing this, Zhong Ningtao made a self-deprecating joke. Maybe they didn't expect us to be so rude. Yeah. Renli nodded slowly, as though she had taken his joke for the truth. She turned to Peng Liyun and the rest and asked curiously, "Why are you guys here?" "I've been at the Inhuman stage for a while now and haven't had any actual combat experience. My hands are itching. Since there's such a good opportunity, I decided to come," replied Peng Liyun with a smile. "Aren't there so many Inhuman seniors in the Shangqing sect?" asked Lu Qing in surprise. "Why wouldn't there be any actual combat experience?" The corners of Peng Liyun's mouth curled up as he laughed. "You also said that I'm a senior. Challenging a senior for no reason will lead to a scolding. My senior brothers and sisters of the same generation as me rarely return to the sect after I advanced. Seems like you're a demon in the Shangqing sect too." Lu Cheng was enlightened and mocked him in his mind. After their exchange, Renli took the initiative to speak. She smiled elegantly and said, "I've just completed my metamorphosis and want to use actual combat to get used to the Inhuman stage. That's why I signed up. I was sent here by my master to gain more experience so as to strengthen my foundation for the Inhuman stage in a year's time," replied Chaoyang. What about you?" Renli looked at Lu Qing. Peng Liyun and Chaoyang were also waiting for his answer with interest. Now that everyone was more familiar with each other, Lu Qing didn't go through the motions like he did at the airport. After thinking for a while, he nodded sincerely and said, "Need money." The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Lu Qing felt that Peng Liyun and the rest were looking at him strangely, as though they were looking at something unbelievable. Just as he was about to speak, the lot drawing ceremony started and a bunch of formalities went through. Taking out his phone secretly, Lu Qing secretly took a photo and sent it to Yan Jika. He also described to her how he felt when he made eye contact with Muko Yamashita and the rest. "You guys look pretty impressive," replied Yenjika with a smile. Yenjika sent an emoji with its hand covering its mouth and said, "I thought it was a bit strange when I saw that the organizing committee called you guys Team Stuck Abroad. Today, I browsed the forum and saw Unparalleled Dragon King's explanation. Then I figured it out. You guys are not Team Stuck Abroad, but Team Stuck Abroad. Especially you, the big pervert." Towards the end of her sentence, she seemed to have thought of something. Her pretty face turned red and her eyes seemed to be both angry and happy. Lu Qing felt something and calmed down. Snickering expression, he replied, "I don't agree with what others say, except for Little Fairy." While chatting, Unparalleled Dragon King came to him and said with anticipation, "Little Tiger, I found a few resources but they only have a fixed broadcast of one arena. We'll be depending on you later. Remember to take a photo for the live broadcast." He implored with an expression of frustration. "Sure, but I have other things to do. If it doesn't clash, it's fine." Lu Cheng was grateful to Unparalleled Dragon King for providing the video of the competition. He didn't reject him but gave him a heads up. If it really didn't work out, he could ask Peng Liyun or An Chaoyang for help. Not long after, the lot drawing ceremony officially started. There was only one way to avoid this double elimination round, and that was to not meet each other from the same country. First, Peng Liyun was picked and would face a boxer from Xinjiang. Then, An Chaoyang would face off against a mighty one from Miluo. After another minute, Ren Li's name was called. Her opponent was a monk from Xinjiang, Fuaku. Lu Qing waited patiently. When it was nearing the end, he finally heard his name, China, Lu Cheng. He adjusted his sitting position and saw that the guest had drawn his opponent, Japan, Ichii Sakata. Ichii Sakata? Lu Qing nodded thoughtfully. He recalled the information about this samurai in his mind. This was one of the 5 Inhumans that Zhong Mingtao had specially reminded of. He was also a disciple of the extreme Hadu sect and a fellow disciple of Muko Yamashita. He used to be on par with Muko Yamashita and had supernatural abilities. He was gradually surpassed by Muko Yamashita and was about to turn 24. He was still stuck at a bottleneck and had no hope of advancing. I've been imitating Muko Yamashita for the past few days and ended up against someone from the extreme Hadu sect. What a coincidence. Over at the Japanese representative team, Ichii Sakata, whose hair was dyed blonde, looked at the matchup with a solemn expression. He could almost imagine the headlines about him that would appear soon. Can the genius of the past return to glory? Chapter 453. After the drawing of lots, the 5 representatives returned to their respective changing rooms to prepare for the first round of double elimination. "I'm so angry. Cheng, your match will be broadcasted, but I have to go to class at that time." Yenjika sent a message with a, "Woof, I'm going to cry," emoji. Lu Qing sat on the bench in the changing room with his head down. He typed on his phone and comforted his wife with a, patting head, emoji. "It's nothing. Just replay it later. I'll definitely win anyway." "Yo, Cheng, you're getting better at bragging." Yenjika said, "Ichii Sakata has supernatural powers and can release waves. He's like a mini Muko Yamashita. He's definitely in the top 10 below the inhuman stage. Then no one would dare to say they're the best below the inhuman stage. Cool, do you have so little confidence in me?" Lu Qing replied with a, hands on hips expression. Yenjika replied with a blank expression, I know my brother Qing can transform at any time if he wants to. But, isn't this accumulating good karma for you? Quick, apologize for not understanding your sister's good intentions." "I'm sorry." Lu Qing couldn't hide his smile. "Actually, I was just bragging just now," he said with a sigh while covering his face. Pfft. Yenjika almost spat out the milk in her mouth. She calmed down and replied with an emoji, "Are you trying to make me laugh to death so you can inherit my Aunt Flower?" Ji Mingyu looked at her daughter helplessly. Ku, I've taught you not to play with your phone when you're eating. You're getting out of hand. You're drinking milk and typing at the same time. Mom, I didn't have a phone to play with when I was young. Yenjika quickly sat up and pointed out the problem. Ji Mingyu was momentarily speechless. After a few seconds of silence, she said, "Get the point, yes, yes." Yenjika ate quickly and gracefully, finishing her breakfast in a few bites. She wiped her mouth with a napkin, picked up her phone and unlocked it. Lu Qing replied with a silly smile, "I admit that I'm stronger than Ichii Sakata, and I have that much confidence in myself. But since I haven't completed my transformation, the gap can't be too big. He still has a chance of winning, so I have to be cautious and give it my all. This concerns the cost of the plane ticket to see my fairy. It's good that you know." Yenjika's mood was lifted, and the dimples on her cheeks were sweet and soft. "How should I cheer you on later? I won't say anything that's too mushy. Kiss me." "Ku, I feel like I'm back in the Warrior Sage Challenge tournament." Lu Qing replied with a snickering emoji. Suddenly, he felt a little sentimental and sighed. It was impossible for Ku to rush to the scene to cheer for him, chat with him on QQ, and cheer for him from afar. The only difference was that they were just friends at that time. Their feelings grew bit by bit as they progressed. But now, they had made a lifelong commitment to each other, and they didn't want their feelings to fade. "Yeah." Yenjika pursed her lips and suddenly became quiet. She paused for a moment and gently typed a few words. "Cheng, I miss you." Looking at her own missed message, she paused for a few seconds before deleting it word by word. She was afraid that it would affect her husband's mood during the competition. Taking a deep breath, she replied with a blushing face. "That's different. You earned money for yourself, but now you're here to see me, that's true." Lu Qing suddenly felt a little more motivated. After chatting for a while, Yenjika began to tie up her hair, put on her glasses, packed her bag and prepared to leave the house. Lu Qing lifted his head and saw Peng Lian leaning against the wall opposite him. His eyes were unfocused, and no one knew what he was thinking about. And Chaoyang's body moved slightly, and his head nodded slightly. He was quietly intoxicated by the melody in his headphones. Renli was holding her phone in her hand, playing a video of her opponent that she had found. Her eyes, however, were looking at the floor, admiring the floor tiles with unique and exotic patterns. A bunch of salted fish. Lu Qing thought of this inexplicable phrase. He shook his head helplessly and flipped through the information on Ichii Sakata stored in his phone. At this moment, he heard two crisp claps. Zhong Ningtao clapped his hands, waking up the salted fish in front of him and attracting their attention. He cleared his throat and said, "This is the semi-finals of the national team. We've prepared uniform martial arts suits for all of you. Hurry up and change. There are only 15 minutes before the official start. You can stay in the locker room or go to the stands. Pay attention to the broadcast announcement and wait around the corresponding arena one round before the start. Renli, don't nod blindly. You have to follow me." "Ah." Renli looked innocent. "It's just a martial arts stadium. How can I not find an arena?" Lu Qing held back his laughter and took the martial arts suit from the leader. There were 2 sets in total. They were the same design but different colors. They were to distinguish between the matches of the same country after the start of the top 16. One of them was plain white with a vertical red stripe from the shoulder to the waist. It looked like a ribbon. It was very cool. The other was red with golden stars. It was flamboyant. Lu Qing chose the first set. He changed in the bathroom and put on the training shoes that Wu Qinggui's company had made for him. They were white and eye-catching, with a unique design. Walking out of the bathroom, he saw Peng Lian and Chaoyang had made the same choice as him. Renli preferred the red one. As for the martial arts shoes on her feet, they were all different. "Shall we go to the stands?" asked Lu Qing, who was going to do a live broadcast with words and pictures. Sure. Renly rushed to answer, and then looked at the leader weakly. Let's all go. It's better to watch from the outside. Peng Liyun looked at Zhong Mingtao with a smile. And Qiaoyang nodded in agreement. Okay. Zhong Mingtao turned around and pushed open the door of the locker room. He then returned to Ren Li's side, not daring to be careless. The organizing committee had set aside several times the number of seats for the contestants to isolate them from the audience. This was to prevent any violent conflicts. Lu Cheng and the others chose a place far away from the other representatives. Some were watching the opponents' videos, while others were contemplating their fighting strategies. Those who were prepared began to take pictures and send them to Yen Zheke and Unparalleled Dragon King. At this time, a live broadcast post had appeared in the Longhu Club forum. Unparalleled Dragon King posted Lu Cheng's picture and the accompanying commentary. Thank you to the reporter Little Tiger for his report. If there are any more important matches that are not to be broadcast, he will give us a text broadcast. Applause required. Clap clap clap. Eternal Nightfall Yen Shaoling, who rarely came here, clapped first and sent a secretly observing emoji. Brahman said enthusiastically, Little Tiger, have you seen my idol? Yes. Lu Cheng glanced sideways at Peng Liyun and caught a glimpse of himself in his unfocused eyes. Really? Quick, take a picture, and I won't make fun of you anymore. Brahman said excitedly. I want to see Renly. Okamoto's fan said with a drooling emoji. Yes, take a picture of Peng Liyun and Qiaoyang too. Unparalleled Dragon King added with great interest. This is a bit difficult. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. Looking around, he came up with a plan and said to Peng Liyun and the others, let's take a picture together. Okay. And Qiaoyang and the others agreed without hesitation. Lu Cheng smiled and handed the phone to Zhong Mingtao. Leader, help us take a picture. Huh, a souvenir? Don't worry, with your qualifications and progress, there will be plenty of opportunities to fight side by side in the future. Zhong Mingtao said with a smile. He took a few steps back and adjusted his pose like a professional. Click, click, click. After a few flashes, he returned the phone to Lu Cheng. Take a look and see what you think. We'll do it again if it doesn't work out. Not bad, much better than me taking it myself. Lu Cheng chuckled and glanced at the photo effect. He realized that he, Peng Liyun, and Qiaoyang were all aliens who stiffened when they were photographed. Renly, on the other hand, had a gentle smile that hinted at heroism and was extremely photogenic. He first sent the picture to Ku, and when she laughed at him, he shared it with the other protagonists. Finally, he put it in the live post. Hey, did you rush in front of them to take the picture? Unparalleled Dragon King and the other onlookers realized something was wrong. Careless. Lu Cheng covered his face and said with a funny face, yeah, that's how professional I am. I admire you, Little Tiger, patting shoulder. Wonton Seller, praised. Yen Shaoling said with a starry-eyed expression, go on, Little Tiger. I can call you brother, father, and grandpa. As your relative, my seniority will be lowered sooner or later. Lu Cheng said with disdain. Brahman said with a rolling on the ground expression, I envy you. I envy you so much. Lu Cheng didn't say anything else. He spent most of his energy watching the competition and sharing it with Yen Zheke. He only took pictures and commentated when there was a lack of live broadcasts. Occasionally, he would exchange views with Peng Liyun, Renly, and Qiaoyang to summarize their judgments. This made Unparalleled Dragon King exclaim that Little Tiger looked so professional that he could be a commentator. Sometimes, his judgment was even better. I'm not fighting alone. Lu Cheng replied. During this process, Peng Liyun and Renly fought one after another. Under the circumstances where their opponents weren't at the peak of sixth pin, they won without shedding a drop of blood. However, the fierceness of Xinjiang's boxing left a deep impression on Lu Cheng and the others. Miluo and Southern Zhang's boxing were similar, but the former was more aggressive and better at using their legs. The latter was more like an assassin's style, vicious and vicious. Not long after, and Chaoyang took the stage. Under the circumstances where he didn't have much of an advantage, he fought for more than 10 minutes and finally defeated his strong opponent from southern Zheng. He fully experienced the cruelty of Zahi boxing. The first round of double elimination matches was coming to an end. Lu Qing said he had something to attend to in the forum, stood up, and walked to the central arena. His match was about to begin, and there was a live broadcast. In the Japanese representatives area, Ichii Sakata took a deep breath and stood up slowly with a solemn expression. Kori Karasawa and Muko Yamashita, who had finished their matches, also looked over. "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid," the Japanese team leader solemnly said to Ichii Sakata. "Yes." Ichii Sakata bowed deeply and turned to walk to the arena. "P.S. My trip is over and I'm returning today. The second update is at midnight. If I don't update on time, it means my flight was delayed and I have to take a break. I'll start updating tomorrow. PS2, I've been updating on time for the past few days. Even I'm scared of it." Chapter 454. How infuriating. Little Tiger actually dropped the ball at such a crucial moment. Banging the table expression, commented Brahman in the Longhu Club forum. Unparalleled Dragon King replied with a smiley face expression, "Luckily we have resources for this match. Why do you guys think Little Tiger has something to do in today's most important match?" Rubbing his chin expression, said Invincible Punch. "Who knows? Maybe he made an appointment? The match arrangement is only released after the lots are drawn," laughing evilly expression, said Okamoto's fan. "Xinjiang's red light district is very famous." "Nonsense. Little Tiger went with his girlfriend. Can't he have something to do at the last minute?" Wonton Seller stood up to uphold justice. Just as everyone was discussing and speculating, Unparalleled Dragon King reminded them, "It's almost time. Ichii Sakata has both supernatural abilities and realms. For Lu Qing, he's a rare opponent below the inhuman stage." Everyone quickly shifted their attention back to the match. When Lu Qing was about to reach the arena, he suddenly heard a special notification from his phone. Picking it up, it was a 2-second voice message from Yen Jika. He clicked on the play button and put it next to his ear. He heard a soft, pop sound. "It's really a kiss." Lu Qing was stunned at first, but soon burst into laughter. He replied with a kissing emoji, handed his phone and wallet to the competition supervisor, and walked up the stairs. Step by step, he settled down his joy, stirred up his blood, and trembled slightly. It was just right. Standing in the middle of the arena, he stood with his feet slightly apart. Gazing into the distance, he watched as his opponent approached quickly. Ichii Sakata, with his blonde hair, seemed to have sensed something. His footsteps slowed down, and in the end, it was as if he was facing a gale or breaking through the waves. It was heavy and difficult. His back was straight, without the slightest bend. His face was brimming with fanaticism, like a soldier about to launch a pig strike or kamikaze attack. 1 step, 2 steps. Ichii Sakata stepped into the arena and stood at the predetermined position, facing Lu Qing from a dozen meters away. As expected of a Japanese samurai who emphasizes willpower and spirit, Lu Qing dispersed the army formula in his mind and retracted his released aura, turning it into a towering, sacred mountain, in the blizzard. He had just tested his opponent a little, using the terrifying aura of the army formula that he had mastered over the past 2 months to suppress Ichii Sakata from afar. He wanted to disturb his mind and destroy his will to test his strength, but it was to no effect. Over the past 1 to 2,000 years, Japan had been deeply influenced by China. This could be seen from various aspects of society, including martial arts. However, under the influence of Japan's characteristics and ethnic habits, they developed different things. For a country that often suffered from earthquakes and typhoons and was short on resources, life was short and easy to lose. It was better to pursue the brilliant blooming of cherry blossoms. Therefore, they paid more attention to the spirit and will in martial arts. After the initial tempering of the physical body, they were not like the Hua nation, where the will controlled the spirit and the spirit controlled the body and gradually became one. Instead, they directly used strong and extreme will to create corresponding changes and produce unique waves. Then, they used this to stimulate the body and burst out with terrifying power and exaggerated speed. Among them, the Limit Hadis sect was a classic example. Lu Qing controlled his body with willpower and spirit, and through the bridge of visualization, he wriggled his muscles, fascias, and organs to produce unique waves to complete the cultivation of force and create certain effects. The Limit Hadis sect used extreme willpower, such as anger or killing intent, to naturally change the body and produce corresponding waves. Then, the waves could be used to stimulate the body or attack the enemy. In other words, they hadn't reached the stage of force concentration. When the waves turned into the body's instincts and truly mastered the wave, they would be considered to be at the inhuman stage. Before reaching this stage, Japanese samurai tended to age prematurely due to their crazy training methods that didn't care about their bodies. Moreover, if their spirit broke down, their strength would plummet. As for the dance stage martial artists of China, even if their willpower was worn down and they were no longer their original selves, they wouldn't regress like a cliff. This was because at that stage, they were already balanced in all aspects. Their material foundation wouldn't suddenly collapse. At most, they would stagnate or experience a slight drop in strength. All sorts of thoughts flashed through Lu Cheng's mind. He saw Ichii Sakata bowing to him with a solemn expression. He returned the greeting with his hands cupped together. At this moment, the referee raised his right hand and announced in English, "Begin." In an international competition, the language barrier meant that conversation time lost its stage. If Lu Qing hadn't been watching the competition for a long time and was mentally prepared, he might have been at a disadvantage. "Begin." Just as the referee finished speaking, a faint white glow appeared on Ichii Sakata's body. A deep tiger's roar reverberated in the air. With his palms facing each other, he placed them at his waist. As his body swayed, he pushed his shoulders forward and extended his arms, setting up the cannon barrel. Hum. His palms opened as though they were the maw of a real dragon. He spat out a ball of white light at Lu Cheng. Extreme had his sect, Dragon Roar had a punch. At the same time, Lu Cheng took a step forward, arched his body forward, and lowered his arms. With a hook and a shake, he sent out a cluster of drifting white cold flames and a brutal fireball at his opponent. Burning ice and fire. Boom! Red flames and white light shone at the same time, neutralizing each other and stirring up a gust of wind. Ichii Sakata seemed to have been prepared. The moment he unleashed the Dragon Roar had a punch, a fanatical look appeared on his face. He stomped on the ground and leaped a dozen meters into the air, landing in front of Lu Cheng in an instant. Extending his right hand, he turned it into a palm knife. Using the momentum of his fall, he viciously chopped at his opponent's neck, leaving behind a trail of faint white light. Extreme had his sect, Tiger Electric Slash. Lu Cheng didn't panic. Placing his feet together, he swung his shoulders and raised his right fist to meet his opponent's chop. Bam! Striking the edge of the palm, Ichii Sakata's body trembled slightly. He swung his arm back slightly, then swiftly turned soft and coiled around Lu Cheng's wrist like a python. Flicking his waist and back, he whipped out his left leg in mid-air, leaving a trail of white light that went from bottom to top. It was an exceptionally ferocious attack. Extreme had his sect, Razor, paired with soft throw. One kick and one coil, leaving the opponent distracted. This martial art included not only striking techniques, but also throwing techniques. Ignoring Ichii Sakata's grab, Lu Cheng adjusted his muscles, fascia, and organs in a flash, visualizing streaks of cold, crystal clear, but lonely and dark. Ice Spirit Holy Light Portrait. After this period of hard training, he had already made some progress and could barely visualize the frost force to the ice spirit force. Bam! The cold wave condensed into a ray of light that shot out from Lu Cheng's waist along with his fist. Bam! A fist shrouded in cold mist blocked Ichii Sakata's razor, while Ichii Sakata's right hand had already wrapped around Lu Cheng's wrist. However, the spot he touched was slippery ice, and he couldn't exert force on it. Ice Sect, 15th move, Ice Armor. Just as Ichii Sakata quickly adjusted, stimulating his body with feverish Hadu in an attempt to break through the layer of ice, he suddenly felt an indescribable chill seeping into his left leg where Lu Cheng's fist collided. He lost all feeling in his leg, and some white frost formed on his trousers. His lips turned blue. Ignoring the danger, he used the stimulation to forcefully twist his waist and kick again, using offense as defense. Bam! Ichii Sakata's right leg swept horizontally, continuing the razor stance from before. Extreme had his sect, whirlwind kick. Lu Cheng sensed it. As Ichii Sakata twisted his waist, he withdrew his chi and blood and squatted down, perfectly avoiding the attack. Bam! The Dan force in his body surged. Stretching his body, his arms expanded, and his right palm shot upwards like a cannon. Bam! White ripples flashed across Ichii Sakata's body, and his right leg strangely stopped moving. Straightening his leg, he chopped downwards like a battle axe. Bam! Fist and leg collided at high speed, momentarily freezing in midair. The exaggerated muscles and shocking lines were clearly visible. Thump, thump, thump. Lu Cheng took 3 steps back, while Ichii Sakata flew backwards without any leverage. Kacha! Lu Cheng exerted force on his feet, shifting his center of gravity, and pounced forward swiftly, like a ferocious beast that had locked onto its prey. In his mind, he visualized Ice Spirit Holy Light, which was boundless darkness without a trace of heat, and instantly transformed it into dense thunderclouds. Ice Spirit Force's version of Severe Warning. Ichii Sakata had just landed when he saw his opponent pouncing at him. Not daring to be careless, he let out a low growl and swung his right fist. As his fist moved forward, his body rapidly emitted a thick white light. The light rose into the shape of a dragon and a tiger. Like a flame, it instantly ignited Ichii Sakata, turning him into a huge Hadu, which struck towards Lu Cheng amidst the roars of dragons and tigers. Ultimate Hadu Sex Killer Move, Roaring Dragon and Tiger Mighty Punch. This was originally the ultimate move of a samurai who had truly mastered Hadu, but Ichii Sakata was able to use it at his current level by relying on his supernatural ability. Bam! Lu Cheng's crystal-frosted fist struck the huge white light. His opponent's strength was terrifying and domineering, coupled with the burning flames and the violent explosion. He couldn't help but take a few steps back, leaving a footprint and a crack in his body. After a few steps, he finally calmed down, but his right arm was still trembling uncontrollably. Ichii Sakata didn't pursue. He stood rooted to the ground, allowing the white light to dissipate bit by bit, revealing his body. Shivering, his eyes lost focus and his consciousness blurred. His dyed yellow hair was covered in ice shards. At this moment, Lu Cheng raised his hand and formed a seal, outlining an ancient character in his mind. "All right," he said in a low voice, his body leaving afterimages as he sprinted towards his opponent. In the Japanese delegation, Muko Yamashita's pupils shrank. P.S. Damn it, I'm stuck. I was supposed to write 6,004 hours this afternoon, but I only managed to write 3,000. There will be a second update at 12. I'll start making up for it tomorrow. Chapter 455. He was surrounded by darkness. There was no light, no warmth, and even the concept of cold was lacking, let alone sound and color. This was where Ichii Sakata wandered aimlessly. It was only when he began to struggle in his heart and was alerted by his own will and spirit that he was jolted awake. He felt the bone-chilling cold, a cold that dulled his thoughts and made him numb. Not good. Ichii Sakata's heart suddenly felt a sense of danger. He finally saw the light in front of him, and saw an opponent that appeared in a flash. Am I going to lose the match and lose all my honor and expectations? No. Struggling, Ichii Sakata tightened his thighs and pulled out his right leg, whipping up a trail of white light that resembled a meteor from the bottom to the top. His kick stimulated the corresponding parts of his body with undulation. The ferocious force caused his body to be deflected. He took advantage of the momentum and sent his left leg flying. Alternating between his legs, he created a bright white whirlwind. Bam bam bam. Crisp sounds rang out continuously, almost converging into a single sound. The white undulation dispersed, opening a path for the whirlwind kick. At the critical moment, Ichii Sakata unleashed an astounding force. Lu Cheng had just closed in when he was met with this ferocious counterattack. He lowered his center of gravity and stopped abruptly. In his mind, he visualized a heavy scorching sun and the god of fire riding a red dragon. His waist and abdominal muscles bulged and his fascias on both sides pulled together. With a burst of his shoulders, he punched forward with his right fist. Bam! In the process of passing through the airflow, his fist seemed to be ignited by a layer of invisible flames that flickered unsteadily. Boom! His fist hit the air and the scarlet flames exploded, spreading forward and setting off a terrifying wave of fire. Amidst the loud boom, the layers of white light were swallowed up by the crimson sea of fire, while Ichii Sakata's feet kicked the sea of fire away, clearing the area around him. Bam! Lu Cheng's arm joints flexed and his fascia stretched. He punched his opponent's foot for the second time, stopping his chain of kicks. The force rebounded and his right arm swung. Lu Cheng's chi and blood retracted and fluctuated. His left arm swelled and flung out, transforming into a large spear that pointed at Ichii Sakata's body. Bam! Ichii Sakata's right arm glowed and swelled to twice its original size. He slashed down vertically, hitting his opponent's fist in time. Then, as his body swayed backwards, his hand blade lowered and dragged, cutting into his opponent's fascias. However, Lu Cheng withdrew his fist as soon as it made contact. Borrowing strength, he returned it to his lower abdomen and kicked out with his right foot. Bam! Bam bam bam! After gaining the upper hand in one move, he immediately suppressed his opponent. 24 blizzard strikes, combined with the seemingly inexhaustible force concentration, launched a series of frenzied attacks. The more he fought, the fiercer and stronger he became. Ichii Sakata couldn't break free from the extreme Hadis sect karate moves even after using several extreme Hadis sect karate moves. He was forced to use the Hada to stimulate his body, sometimes retreating and struggling to hold on. His heart skipped a beat. What he was feeling wasn't an illusion. There really was a cold wind blowing around him. Snowflakes fell and melted in an instant. He's about to transform. Peng Liyun murmured thoughtfully, no longer in a daze. He clutched his phone with one hand and stuffed the other in his pocket. In the past, Lu Cheng's supernatural ability was his supernatural ability, and the dance stage explosion was the dance stage explosion. There was a clear distinction between the two, and there was an obvious gap between them. But now, with his continuous force concentration, the force of frost was gradually revealing itself. It was almost becoming an instinct. What did this mean? It meant that his root pulp was showing signs of internal transformation. He was about to push open the door to the inhuman stage and begin an important transformation on the path of martial arts. So fast. Renly frowned slightly. Feeling the pressure of her competitor closing in, she had a strong desire to move forward. And Chaoyang took a deep breath, forgetting the music in his ears. He muttered to himself, how many months has it been? It hadn't even been 4 months since the end of the national competition in April. Lu Cheng's state had already soared from the peak of 6th pin to the brink of a breakthrough. This was like riding a rocket to the next level. After a short moment of shock, he suddenly remembered something. He smiled at Renli and Peng Liyun. It's less than a month before the all-knowing man starts crying. Gambling isn't good. Peng Liyun nodded seriously. He logged into his Weibo and quietly browsed through the popular content of the all-knowing man in ganghood over the years. It seemed like a farewell ceremony. Renly pondered for a few seconds. She took out her phone and found the gambling column. She planned to use her personal savings to earn some extra money and donate it. 10 seconds later, she revealed an embarrassed smile. She turned to An Chaoyang and the team leader, Zhong Ningtao. How do I do this? I've only heard of it, but never gambled on it. In the Japanese representatives area, Kori Karasawa sat quietly. She looked at the arena and said in a neutral tone, Ikiai-kun, if you can't break through your past self, the competition will be tough. Yes. Muko Yamashita retracted his gaze. His expression had returned to normal. The old-fashioned and serious team leader looked at him and asked in a deep voice, Muko-kun, can you beat this contestant Lu Cheng? The void behind Muko Yamashita seemed to be shaking. A milky white light flashed and disappeared, rising into the vague shape of a dragon and tiger. Yes. He answered succinctly. Even if Lu Cheng made a breakthrough and completed his transformation according to the Chinese, I'm still confident in my current state. In the Longhu Club Forum, unparalleled Dragon King, who couldn't feel the cold wind and see the falling snow, sighed. Lu Cheng is improving so fast. Now even his physical fitness is at the top of the 6th pin. It's not impossible for him to break through to the inhuman stage before the end of the year. Yeah. I thought Ichii Sakata, an outstanding 6th pin fighter, would be able to create some trouble for him. Who knew, from the beginning until now, Ichii Sakata didn't even have a chance. Road to the arena, sighed. Let's watch. Every fighter who can reach this level is not easy to deal with. The more advantageous the situation is, the more Lu Cheng can't be careless. Pig Riding Knight expressed his opinion. Brahman and Eternal Nightfall didn't have time to discuss or praise. They silently saved up their luck and watched the competition. Bam bam bam. Bam bam bam. Ichii Sakata felt the cold wind getting stronger and his body stiffening. He knew that if this continued, he would be crushed sooner or later by Lu Cheng, who kept borrowing strength and getting stronger. This can't go on. I have to break out. Ichii Sakata screamed in his heart. He tried desperately, but he was too slow to make a decision. Lu Cheng's Mega Avalanche had already taken shape. It was powerful and almost impossible to interrupt. The more he fought, the more hopeless he felt. Ichii Sakata could see the referee raising his right hand and announcing his defeat. He could also see the criticism and ridicule on the internet and newspapers. No. I can't lose. I can't lose to an opponent of the same level. He thought of his father, who was also from the extreme Hadis sect. He thought of his father's fervent hope. He thought of his friends fawning over him. He thought of the admiration in the eyes of the girls. He thought of the various privileges he received in his daily life. He thought of the moment his halo disappeared and he became an ordinary samurai, he would lose everything and never be able to raise his head again. Even if he was still strong, he would no longer be the center of attention. No. I don't want this to happen. Ichii Sakata's mind buzzed. His vision seemed to be filled with a glaring blood red. The long-suppressed feelings of fear, hatred, and murderous intent in his heart suddenly erupted. At this moment, the pale white glow radiating from his body was gradually dyed a faint crimson. The hustle and bustle returned to silence and restraint. Come on. Ichii Sakata roared. He took a step forward with his left foot and punched with his right fist. With a bang, a crimson glow enveloped his body, exuding a thick murderous intent. It intimidated his opponent's heart and mind, making it difficult for Lu Cheng to focus for a short while. Extreme Hadis sect Shirkill move, 7 sins Hadid punch. This move used negative thoughts as fuel. It was equivalent to a combination of Dragon Roar Hadid punch and the army formula, bringing with it the effect of fear. Memories brought explosive power. Ichi Sakata broke through his past and delivered the strongest punch of his life. Amidst the deep roars of dragons and tigers, the pale red Hadu transformed into a sharp scythe of death. With Ichi Sakata's fist as the blade, it cleaved at his enemy. Lu Cheng had a premonition of danger when Ichi Sakata's white Hadu changed. Flipping his hands, he formed a seal and outlined the fearless, forwarding formula in his mind. As the voice echoed, he managed to intimidate his heart and mind in time. He bounced back and retreated quickly. He wasn't retreating to avoid Ichi Sakata's 7 sins Hadu punch. It was too fast for him to dodge. He was retreating to buy himself some time to prepare. In Lu Cheng's mind, the great river freezes appeared. In a vast expanse of whiteness, a huge crimson sun fell from the sky and smashed into this cold world. Boom! Ice and fire collided violently with his right fist, collapsing and condensing into a dark dot or vortex. Bam! Lu Cheng lowered his feet, bounced his back, and pulled back his right arm before shooting it out like lightning. Mutated version of severe warning. Poof! As the fist and the faint red Hadu punch collided, the glow disappeared. All the murderous intent, fear, and power seemed to have been absorbed by Lu Cheng and hidden in the vortex that had collapsed. Boom! The vortex disintegrated, and the violent recoil of energy slammed into Ichi Sakata's fist like a tidal wave, sending him flying. Lu Cheng's right arm was sore and swollen. For a moment, he lost his strength. Without waiting for it to recover, he stomped on the ground and pounced forward with a loud crack, closing in on his opponent who had yet to land. At this moment, Ichi Sakata struck the ground with a milky white Hadu punch, stirring up a cloud of dust and scattering shockwaves. Lu Cheng was about to throw another punch when his heart skipped a beat. He realized that his ability to lock onto his opponent had mysteriously lost its effect. In that instant, Ichi Sakata seemed to have disappeared from the arena. He couldn't sense him at all. An ice mirror formed in his mind as he sensed danger coming at him from behind. Lu Cheng turned his back, leaned to the side, and lightly kicked out with his left leg. Bam! The back of his foot struck Ichi Sakata, who had appeared out of nowhere. The impact made his body wobble, and the killing move he was about to unleash came to an abrupt halt. What Ichi Sakata had just used was the ninjutsu, back attack that he had been secretly practicing for the past 2 years. However, it felt like he had fallen into a trap. Once the move was successful, Lu Cheng immediately followed up with a right kick, from the bottom up. Bam, bam, bam. 1 kick, 2 kicks, 3 kicks. He kicked Ichi Sakata until he was floating. Lu Cheng retracted his aura and immediately unleashed it. His body spun rapidly, and with a snap, his left leg kicked Ichi Sakata, sending him flying like a soccer ball. Thump! Ichi Sakata lost his balance and fell heavily. Then, he heard the ancient sound of the word attainment, and saw Lu Cheng's white martial arts shoes stop beside his ear. The referee raised his right hand and announced in English, "Lu Cheng wins." Chapter 456. Lu Cheng wins. The unfamiliar voice echoed in his ears. Lying on the ground, Ichi Sakata's mind went blank, forgetting to stand up. It was as though he had returned to his home, to the days he felt when he woke up every afternoon. I did my best and broke through the past, but I still lost the match. Lu Cheng's shoes were undamaged. He didn't seem to have used his full strength at all. He was still at ease. When I was overtaken by Mukokun, I comforted myself that running fast might not necessarily be a good one. The second half of the race was more important. When he had mastered the real wave, I was stuck at the same spot. I comforted myself that I was invincible below this level, I was the strongest, and I would definitely be able to advance in the future, but now, facing a 20-year-old opponent of the same level, I lost so pathetically and powerlessly. What else could I use to comfort myself? Lu Cheng withdrew his hand and coughed, waking Ichi Sakata up. Ichi Sakata stood up, his eyes full of confusion and frustration. With only a few Japanese words, Ichii Sakata couldn't communicate, so he didn't bother to say more. He cupped his hands and whispered in his mother tongue, "Thank you." Japanese samurai valued etiquette above all else. He couldn't embarrass his country in this aspect. Ichii Sakata returned the salute with a bow out of habit. He turned around and walked down the ring with hazy footsteps, completely ignoring the pain in his arms. He had used ninjutsu, back attack in a desperate situation, and his lower body was unsteady. Coupled with the recoil damage from the mutated version of severe warning, even though he had been able to block Lu Cheng's consecutive kicks, he was still floating in the air. His arms were almost broken or cracked. Lu Cheng wasn't interested in Ichii Sakata's journey or behind-the-scenes story. He even forgot to greet the audience and rushed down the stone steps to find the competition supervisor. After retrieving his wallet and phone, he unlocked the screen and sent a message to Yen Jika. "I won." At this moment, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Chao Yang, who had raised their right hands to congratulate Lu Cheng, withdrew them awkwardly. They pretended to look around and commented on the matches in the other arenas. Yen Jika seemed to have been waiting. Soon, she sent a surprised emoji. 3.5 minutes. Ichii Sakata lives up to his name. Pfft, I'll be proud if you flatter me like this. Lu Cheng smirked and sent a picture with an expression similar to his own. What Ku was implying was that those who could last more than 1 or 2 minutes against her were the best of the best among the 6th pin. Yen Jika sent an emoji of covering her mouth and laughing. Hee, please call me professional orange bragger. Alright, now we can focus on class. Lu Cheng put away his phone and returned to the stands. He was in a good mood and gave Peng Liyun, and Chao Yang, Ren Li, and Zhong Ningtao a high five. The expressions of my teammates are a bit strange. What's wrong? Lu Cheng asked in confusion. Nothing. Peng Liyun's gaze continued to wander. And Chao Yang did not look sideways and focused on the song. Ren Li lowered her head and seriously studied the problem of how to bet. In the Longhu Club forum, Unparalleled Dragon King commented with a comical expression. I'm browsing the Japanese forums. It's so fun to read their comments. You know Japanese? Hurry up and translate it. Let me see how they flatter you. Eternal Nightfall, Yen Shaoling deliberately sent an emoji. Let's wait. Brahman quickly replied. After a while, Unparalleled Dragon King began to translate the comments one by one. Ichii Sakata has really become an ordinary person. Ichii-kun actually performed above his usual standards but still failed. He didn't stand a chance from the beginning to the end. Only when he unleashed the 7 sins kill was a surprise and hope, but it didn't have any effect. Idiot. Why would idiots like Ishihara from the Martial Arts Association give 4 wild cards to China? That Lu Cheng was already very famous last year. I've even seen his name here. I feel like he's a genius, even better than Mukokuen. I heard that China has many geniuses on the same level as him. All the contestants this time are of the same level. After all, it's an ancient country full of history. We can only look forward to Kori-chan and Mukokuen. Kori-chan is the best. The Japanese are quite cultured. They didn't show any sour expressions. Wonton Seller said, laughing with arms akimbo expression. Eternal Nightfall, Yen Shaoling played dumb and said, although I don't understand what they're saying, it still feels good. There's nothing happier than the defeat, praise, and envy of the enemy. Little dragon, I'll leave the important task of translating such comments to you. Patting shoulder emoji, said Brahman excitedly. After browsing through the content of the live stream post, Lu Cheng felt even better. He didn't appear again. After the first round of the double elimination competition ended, he and his teammates went straight back to the hotel. Standing in front of the window of the room on the top floor, he looked at the bright lights that symbolized human civilization and waited for the next round, full of ambition. Picking up his phone, Lu Cheng shared his feelings with his wife. At the end of it, he replied, there's a prize for entering the top 16. Yenjika was in class and couldn't reply in time. Lu Qing waited for a while but didn't hear the special reminder. He unlocked the screen subconsciously and wanted to send another message. But after he finished typing, he thought that sending too many messages would affect the girl's study, so he restrained himself and deleted the content he had written word by word. After washing up, Lu Qing turned off all the lights and lay on the bed in the quiet darkness, looking for something to do to pass the time. After seeing Fatty Jiang crying about being hungry for supper, he kindly sent the Xinjiang food map that he had stolen in the past few days to his best friend. "You're so mean. I've decided to go out and eat old Lu's barbecue. I'll take a picture for you later." "You're welcome." Jiang Fei sent a, "come on, let's hurt each other," emoji. "Pinch the fat on your body and touch your bulging belly. Doesn't your conscience hurt?" Lu Qing scolded, "Besides, I'm going to sleep. I can't see what you send." Manual smiley face emoji. While dealing a blow to Fatty Jiang, Yenjika replied to Fatty Jiang's previous message. "I'll wait for you to treat me to a big meal with the prize money. By the way, Empress Dowager will be back in China around the 14th of September. Okay." Lu Qing quickly changed the app and booked a flight to America on the 14th of September. He sent a screenshot to Yenjika. "I really want to tear up a dozen pages of the calendar." Yenjika said what was in her heart in a joking tone. After chatting for a while, it was time for class and Lu Qing to go to bed. So they said goodnight to each other. The next morning, he woke up on time and did all kinds of things step by step. When he was done, he went to the training place and continued his hard training day after day. In his visualization, a cold light burst out. It was crystal clear and shone dreamily, but it set off the boundless darkness, endless loneliness, and extreme coldness without any heat. As the picture took shape, Lu Qing felt that the power of frost in his body was changing slightly. It was more illusory, more ethereal, more like a whirlpool that absorbed heat. This was the upgrade of the frost force to the ice spirit force. He had already found the way and was building a solid foundation. After practicing the ice spirit force for a while, Lu Qing took out the Emperor Yen diagram that had lost a lot of its charm. He focused his mind and tried to understand it, trying to picture that kind of concentration, that kind of heaviness, that kind of explosion and that kind of eruption in his mind. However, he was still a little short and couldn't visualize it successfully. Looks like the Emperor Yen force is the highly condensed Zhu Rong force. Lu Qing thought. When his mind reached its limit, he turned to training his fists and legs. It was another day without any surprises. They practiced in the morning and rested in the afternoon. At night, they came to the Xinjiang Stadium to watch the second round of double elimination draw. Because it was only the first round, no one had lost 2 rounds. So there were still 36 contestants and 18 matches. This time, Lu Cheng's name was drawn early. Who will it be? I hope it's not a Japanese samurai. I need to experience more different martial arts. He thought to himself. A few seconds later, the guest drew his opponent and shouted out the name, Miluo, Vagar. Vagar? Lu Cheng turned his head in shock and looked at the cold-looking man in the blue general uniform. He was looking at him with an expressionless face. His silver eyes were dark and flickering. Damn, I'm going against the second seed in the second round of double elimination. It's really not a Japanese samurai. Chapter 457. Vagar. In the live broadcast post of Longhu Club Forum, Unparalleled Dragon King typed with a Nike mouth emoji. This is getting interesting. Road to the Arena replied with a smiley face emoji. It's indeed interesting. He's right in front of the Inhuman stage, and it's the second round of the double elimination round where he doesn't have a strong desire to win. It's definitely a good experience for Lu Cheng to have an intense clash with an expert of the Inhuman stage. That's enough. We don't need to worry about the outcome. Anyway, I don't think Lu Cheng will win. Not necessarily. Lu Cheng's physical fitness, mastery of moves, and battle rhythm are all at the level of a top 6th pin fighter. Coupled with his powerful supernatural ability, it's not impossible for him to beat the newly promoted Inhuman Mighty One. A plumber eating mushrooms joined the discussion. But the chances are slim. Pig Riding Knight chimed in, Vagar is very popular in the surrounding countries. If it weren't for his strong supernatural ability that interferes with the ability to sense the root pulp, he might have been able to step into the Inhuman stage 1 or 2 years earlier. I think that among the 4 contestants, only Peng Liyun has a higher chance of winning against him. Ren Li is still a bit off. Above the sky, the rock and roll girl said, I heard that Xinjiang, Miluo, and Nanjing haven't had professional competitions yet. Compared to our country, their martial artists should be lacking in battle experience, right? This is good for Lu Cheng. Ha, sister-in-law, don't think that Xinjiang and Miluo don't have mature professional matches. Their fighters have plenty of opportunities for actual combat. Unparalleled Dragon King explained, their domestic situation is often unstable, and they are affected by the nearby war-torn areas. Their economic environment isn't good either. There are many bloody underground arenas, street fights, and even occasional local wars. Their life and death experience is much better than Lu Cheng and the others. Although Vagar is the son of a warlord and a future general, he likes to practice his martial arts on the battlefield the most. He trains his spirit through killing. As long as he doesn't die, he will definitely be a figure who dominates a region in the future. Sob sob sob, I'm getting nervous from your words. Brahman sent 2 streams of tears gushing out like a fountain. Eternal Nightfall, Yen Shaoling, who was secretly observing, chimed in. This is the first time I've felt nervous since the end of the Nationals. So you're usually in a dead state, stupid Nightfall. When facing Yen Shaoling, Unparalleled Dragon King couldn't help but mock her. I'm angry. The baby was a little emotional. I'll forgive you if you go to the Lu Cheng forum and post a live broadcast. Yen Shaoling wasn't stupid at all at this time. Sure, Schrodinger's tiger, little tiger, let's continue the live broadcast today. Although the match between Lu Cheng and Vagar will definitely be broadcasted, you still have to take pictures for us on the spot. Unparalleled Dragon King gladly agreed and started looking for the little war reporter. My opponent is Vagar. Lu Cheng didn't have the time to browse the forums, so he sent the results of the draw to Yen Jika immediately. In the second round of double elimination, he actually encountered a strong opponent who was definitely in the top 4 of this competition. Yen Jika woke up early as promised. She was not only practicing martial arts, but also concerned about her husband's competition. Soon, she replied with a blank, looking at the sky in the wind. Vagar. Cheng, I've realized that when you participate in the individual challenge tournament, your luck isn't very good. Lu Cheng still had a way out, so he wasn't too nervous. Now that he had calmed down, he changed his mind and replied, maybe it's because I've spent my life's luck on certain things. Pfft. Yen Jika pursed her lips and smiled faintly. She turned her head to the side and paused for a few seconds before replying, you're getting better at talking. It's okay, you have your sister's good luck shining on you. At this point, she sent an emoji with her chin resting on her hands. Cheng, I think it's time for you to attack first. Vagar was a representative figure of a national sect. Yen Jika and Lu Cheng had already discussed and analyzed him when they were chatting. Now, there was no need for more words or elaboration. They went straight to the point. Yeah, we have the same idea. Lu Cheng's body suddenly trembled. That was the eagerness to fight. The reason why Inhumans were called Inhumans was because they were close to monsters in all aspects. Lu Cheng's current insane physical strength could only be said to not be at a disadvantage in front of mighty ones of this level. If he were to engage in a protracted battle or a battle of attrition, he wouldn't stand a chance. On the contrary, it would be easier for his opponent to suppress him by relying on his realm and strength advantage. The best way to win against a strong opponent like Vagar was to use the 3 axes of Qing Yao Jin to gain the upper hand and put his opponent at a disadvantage for a short period of time. Then, he would seize the opportunity to find a way to win and end the battle quickly before his opponent could show his strength. Be it China, Japan, Milieu, Old Europe, or New America, all the martial arts combat systems were essentially the same at the critical junctures. For example, the inhuman's root pulp would mutate to a certain extent due to cultivation, and the body would undergo a metamorphosis. As for how to cultivate, that would be up to each individual. Milieu, for example, blended the two martial arts philosophies of China and Polo. Under the influence of years of war, they developed a unique cultivation system. Through perverse polishing and tempering of the body, they would stimulate their potential and awaken the natural treasures of the human body. They would slowly guide the root pulp and gradually mutate. Xinjiang and Nanjing were similar. Therefore, if the martial artists of these countries couldn't reach the inhuman level, they would be miserable in middle age. Due to overdraft and old injuries, they would be tormented by illness and pain. Most of them wouldn't live past 50. If the environment was stable and the economy was good, there would be fewer people practicing such martial arts. Unless they were desperate, they wouldn't choose it. However, in Xinjiang, Milieu, and Nanjing, the economy was poor, the situation was chaotic, and the unemployment rate was high. People who were so poor that they wouldn't live past 50 could be found everywhere. Given such an opportunity to change their fate, they would definitely grab it. Lu Qing remembered a scholar who had studied such situations and published a book called The Influence of the Geographical Environment on the Martial Arts System. While he and Yan Zhika were discussing how to fight Vagar, Peng Liyun was drawn to face the 8th seed of the competition, a top-notch 6th pin with a strong psychic supernatural ability, Li Shaokong of Nanjing. Everyone's luck isn't so good today, Peng Liyun said with a smile as he played with his phone. While he was talking, Renli drew the Japanese fighters except for Kori Karasawa, Muko Yamashita, and Ichii Sakata. A few seconds after he finished, and Chaoyang was also drawn. His opponent was a strong fighter from Milieu who had the strength of a top-notch 6th pin. Lu Qing looked deeply at Peng Liyun and nodded solemnly. No, it's just the two of us. After that, they looked at each other and smiled. They weren't upset or angry. In fact, they couldn't wait to drag their opponent into the ring. Not long after, Lu Cheng's match against Vagar was about to begin as he had been drawn earlier. At this moment, he saw the request from unparalleled Dragon King. After thinking for a while, he turned to Peng Liyun, Renli, and An Chaoyang. Can you help me take a picture later? Compared to Zhong Mingtao, he trusted Peng Liyun and the rest more. This was probably the appreciation of martial artists. Huh. Renli and the rest were at a loss at first. Then, they gave him a strange look, as if to say, I didn't expect you to be like this. I've seen narcissistic people before, but not this narcissistic. Cough. Lu Qing blushed and quickly explained. A friend of mine is doing a live stream post for the King of Youth Pro League. He asked me to take a few pictures for the occasion. He doesn't know I'm Lu Qing. I can't tell him I'm going to the competition. Wait a moment. Got it. Peng Liyun smiled leisurely. I have an account in the forum too. I'm also lurking. F***K. Lu Qing immediately asked, what's your name? I mainly mingle in Shangqing sect and my own personal forum. You probably don't know me. I'm called Multistring Trickster. Peng Liyun answered with interest. What about you guys? I only read and don't comment. I don't have an account. Renli was a little embarrassed. I'm afraid I can't help but quarrel with others. You know how to quarrel? Lu Cheng was shocked. Yeah, very good. Renli answered seriously. But the rest didn't quite believe her. And Chaoyang smiled. I don't pay much attention to the martial arts forum. Most of the time, I'm reading books, looking for music, reading comments, and writing. Writing. He's a literary hero of a generation. Don't offend him, or he'll write about me as a weirdo. Lu Qing complained in his mind and told them his nickname on the forum. My name is Schrodinger's Tiger. You guys can help me post a picture in the live post later. Schrodinger's Tiger. Multi-string trickster. We're a good match. Peng Lian joked. Without waiting for Lu Qing to reply, he seemed to have touched something. His eyes started to lose focus and his thoughts drifted. Turning his gaze back to the arena, he sent a message to Yan Jika. Snickering emoji, it's time for me to go on stage. How are you going to cheer me on today? Cheer me on? Yan Jika deliberately blinked blankly and immediately sent him a picture. It was a marriage certificate with their names written on it and their photos pasted on it. How is it? Are you motivated to see this? Yan Jika said. Yeah. Nodding heavily expression, Lu Qing replied. Fighting for the sake of his family. Lu Qing unlocked his phone, switched to the live stream interface and passed it to Peng Lian. He took a deep breath, left his seat and walked towards the arena. Opposite him, the tall and muscular Vagar suddenly stood up. Cheers filled the arena. The sound waves of Vagar suppressed all the restlessness. As a genius martial artist with a strong personality, he was also very popular in Xinjiang. Thump, thump, thump. His footsteps were heavy as he walked towards the stone steps majestically. He had a terrifying domineering aura. Lu Qing didn't back down. His aura gradually grew. He was like a majestic white snow mountain that hadn't moved for thousands of years. The biting cold wind that surrounded him contained an intimidating aura of blood. Bam! Both of them stepped into the arena at the same time. When their eyes met, it was as if lightning flashed. Standing in his position, Lu Qing closed his eyes. Bits and pieces of information about Vagar flashed through his mind. The supernatural ability of thunder and lightning. His martial arts were born from fighting, concise and practical. Good at using elbows and knees. Great strength and speed. Similar to the inhuman stage, what a formidable opponent. Therefore, he had to start the fight first and gain the upper hand. Vagar was wearing a Miluo-style general hat. At this moment, he lowered the brim of the hat and used the shadow to cover half of his eyes, making the silver-white lightning in his pupils even more terrifying. Before long, the referee raised his right hand and swung it down. Begin. Just as he finished speaking, Lu Qing raised his hands and formed a seal. He said in a low voice, "All right. P.S. My previous updates were on time. Actually, I didn't save any chapters. Probably because I was in Japan, which was an hour faster than here. By the time I finished writing according to the usual procrastination pace, even though it was already 7 in the local area, it was only 6 in the country. Facepalm, for this trip, I've brought back a few cuttlefish toys as gifts for everyone. I've started the lucky draw on the official WeChat account. Everyone, leave a comment. Chapter 458. All right. The deep ancient voice reverberated. Lu Qing dashed out in a white line, leaving after images behind. He was in front of his opponent at a shocking speed. Vagar was wearing a military cap. He lowered his body and stood with his left foot in front of him and his right foot behind him. He spread his arms apart and got into a boxing stance. At this moment, he suddenly lowered his waist and leaped up like a spring. His majestic and burly body created a violent sound of wind as he fell down like Mount Tai. He bent his knees and directly hit Lu Cheng's chest. The white knee pads at the back of his knees seemed to have turned into deadly weapons. Miluo's martial arts style was to master basic movements such as punches, elbows, kicks, knees, and so on. They didn't care about complicated routines. They freely combined them in a way that was most suitable for actual combat. Continuous attacks were fierce and swift. In order to achieve the effect of defeating the enemy, the knees and elbows of the martial artists were trained in a special way. Vagar didn't move forward but instead retreated. He grasped the timing very well. He took a few steps forward and didn't give his opponent time to prepare a killer move. Once his knee was blocked, he would immediately smash his elbow, kick his calf, and follow up with a series of deadly attacks. It was impossible to guard against and block. Seeing that Lu Cheng was about to crash into Vagar's knees and walk right into the trap, Lu Cheng suddenly withdrew his chi and blood. His force, spirit, and forward momentum collapsed inward and concentrated in his lower abdomen. His high-speed running came to an abrupt halt. Lu Cheng had been teammates with Lin Ke for a long time, and he often guided Yan Zhike in her practice. Naturally, he was familiar with their yin-yang twist and meteor blast. With the help of his little fairy and his own experience, he gradually found the knack of using force concentration and north wind footwork to imitate the ability to stop at will. Although it was definitely not as exquisite and marvelous as the original version, it could still be of some use at critical moments. Squeak. A sharp, ear-piercing sound of high-speed friction sounded. Lu Cheng's position was one step behind Vagar's predicted position. It was this one step that caused Vagar's knee to weaken. When it reached him, it was no longer at its peak state. Boom! The force in Lu Cheng's dantian erupted like a volcano. His muscles swelled and his body grew taller. The ground beneath his feet cracked open menacingly. He hurriedly swung his shoulders, his right fist clenched like a hammer in front of him, carrying a tremendous force as he struck out with a loud bang. Bam! He punched his opponent's knee, stirring up a strong wind that sent Vagar flying in midair. Crack! With a stomp of his feet, Lu Cheng's body shot out like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, he was right in front of Vagar. Forming a seal with both hands, he pointed at himself. In his mind, he sketched out an ancient character that would never admit defeat. Fight! Lu Cheng let out a low roar. His eyes were bloodshot. He pushed his feet inward, twisted his knees backward, and tightened his waist. He channeled all his strength into his right arm. The martial arts shoes on his feet directly burst open, complementing the splashing stones. At the same time, his right arm swelled up and raised high. His fist covered the sky and the sun as it fell, making the airflow in the air abruptly produce a loud bang. Lu Cheng gave it his all right from the start. He didn't hold back at all. Vagar had just regained his footing when he was faced with such a blow. He had no choice but to take it head-on. His face was as cold as ever. His big brimmed hat was lowered. His eyes shone brightly. His right fist was covered in a layer of lightning, as though he was wearing a loose thunder glove. Bam! His thick arms swung quickly. His fist was covered in lightning as he punched upwards. Bam! The two fists collided violently. Vagar's right arm seemed to tremble. His feet sank into the ground of the arena with a crack. He was a few centimeters shorter than before. With the fighting formula, Lu Cheng was able to suppress this young mighty one who was almost at the inhuman stage and stop him in his tracks. Lu Cheng was prepared. His right arm bounced back and his body swayed. He took a deep breath and gathered the numbness in his arm, his chi, blood, spirit, and force into his lower abdomen. He formed a human body Big Dan and stabilized himself in his previous position. With the eruption of Dan Chi, Lu Cheng's thigh swelled. He pulled out his left leg tightly and kicked towards the side of his opponent's knee. Vagar was slower by half a beat. He barely managed to lift his knee and swing his leg slightly. He hit Lu Cheng's instep squarely. With a dull thud, his body swayed forward. He saw Lu Cheng swinging his right arm and about to punch. Vagar didn't dare to underestimate Lu Cheng. He activated his potential and stabilized his center of gravity. His left fist was hooked to his waist. He was wearing a silver-white jumping glove. But at this moment, Lu Cheng's punch paused for a moment. His rhythm changed. When Vagar's heavy punch was about to hit him, he released the strength in his shoulder, shook his right arm, and punched downwards. It was in this change of pace that he found the time to visualize the ice spirit holy light. He used the advantage to exchange for the opportunity to use severe warning. In the boundless darkness, everything was so lonely. There was not even a trace of heat. The crystal clear and dreamy cold light seemed to be just an illusion. Soon after, thunderclouds appeared. Yin and yang collided, and the sound spread out, breaking all the frozen state. Boom! The sound of thunder was deafening. Lu Cheng's fist was covered in white frost and condensed into ice crystals. He smashed onto his opponent's electric glove. Crackle! Silver flew everywhere. Vagar stood there, stunned. His left hand from his fist to his arm was shrouded in mist and frost. His eyes lost their light for a moment, as though he had just walked out of a deep, frozen sleep. Lu Cheng, on the other hand, was thrown backward by his heavy punch and involuntarily took a step back. But while he was retreating, his right arm swung back and his left wrist flicked at the right time, throwing out a ball of glittering and translucent cold light, burning towards the enemy's face. His killer moves were in succession, leaving no gaps. The cold light flew and arrived in an instant. Vagar, who had just regained consciousness by relying on his tyrannical physical body, saw this unavoidable and unstoppable attack. His heart tightened, and his aura suddenly erupted. A burst of dazzling light appeared all over his body, and with him as the core, electric snakes danced in all directions. Secret technique, thunder explosion. Bam! The ice was hit and turned into flowing light. Lu Cheng, however, had already stabilized his center of gravity. He pounced again, visualizing the dreamy and deadly ice spirit holy light in his mind. He knew clearly that although the internal explosion punch could hurt Vagar at his current level, it would be difficult for him, who had an inhuman body, to restrain the internal shock and affect his movements before the third strike. That way, he would be suppressed very quickly and might not have the opportunity to use internal explosion. Therefore, when facing such a strong opponent, control was the priority. Severe warning was the best choice. Everything has its end, and so did thunder explosion. Lu Cheng deliberately slowed down his attack. He waited until the silver-white electric snakes that stretched out like hedgehogs dimmed. Then, he took a step forward, lowered his waist, and punched at Vagar's lower abdomen. His fist went straight forward and was quickly covered in a layer of white light. Vagar's eyes, hidden in the shadow of his large-brimmed hat, grew colder. He lowered his arm and waved it, forming the electric gloves. This was an inhuman whose root pulp had mutated. His every move was heavy and carried his own supernatural ability. He could release and retract it as he pleased. Just as he launched his electric fist, Lu Cheng suddenly clamped his tailbone and straightened his body. He raised his right arm to dodge the attack and launched a low kick with his left leg. In the snowy sky, coldness rises from the bottom of his feet. Bam! Sensing danger, Vagar dispersed the force of his punch. His terrifying right leg, half the size of Lu Cheng's, met force with force. At this moment, Lu Cheng swayed his center of gravity, arched his body forward, and stepped down with his left leg. In a flash, he was behind Vagar. He raised his left arm, like the omnipresent cold wind. The ice spirit holy light in his mind was broken by the tremors of the thundercloud. Boom! Everything was ready. He swung his fist down like a baton. Vagar had been at a disadvantage since the beginning and hadn't been able to turn the tables. Now that he hadn't retracted his right leg, the enemy's attack had landed him in a precarious situation. He couldn't help but feel angry and resentful. At this critical juncture, he let go of all his contempt and arrogance. He took a deep breath and fully activated the treasures of his body. BZZT BZZT BZZT. Rings of electric light surrounded his body. He bounced up on one leg, leaned back, and spun into a terrifying drill. He collided head-on with Lu Cheng's left fist. Vagar's ultimate move, electric piercing. Bam! Amidst the dull thud, a bright light exploded, blinding most of the audience. They couldn't see clearly what was happening in the arena. There, Vagar fell to the ground on one knee. His eyes were unfocused, and he had lost his general hat. Around him was a cloud of frost. Lu Cheng's hair stood on end, and his body was trembling violently. All he could see were silver snakes. He saw an opportunity, but he was so numb that he couldn't even use force concentration. In a breath, the two recovered at the same time. They rushed to each other and clashed again. Bam! Amidst the loud noise, Peng Liyun suddenly sighed. Lu Qing really could have won just now. Ren Lian and Chaoyang had just recovered from the exciting battle. They nodded at his words. Oh right, did you take a picture of Lu Qing? And Chaoyang recalled his teammate's reminder. Peng Liyun pondered for a moment before replying sincerely. I forgot. The three of them fell silent. Peng Liyun passed his unlocked phone to Ren Li and said seriously, You're the best at taking pictures. You do it. Okay. Ren Li, always confident, took the phone without hesitation. Chapter 459. Gotcha. Ren Li made some adjustments and took 3 photos of the arena. After looking at them with satisfaction, she posted them on the live stream thread to complete the request. After watching the battle for a while, she refreshed the post to see what others thought of her photography skills. Schrodinger's tiger, the photos are so blurry, said Unparalleled Dragon King. Okamoto's fan said with a funny face, Little tiger, are your hands shaking because you've been working too hard these few days? I can only tell based on the color of their clothes, said Below the Sky. Ren Li's eyelids twitched. She couldn't help but reply with Lu Cheng's account. They're all moving at high speed. It's good enough that you can get this effect with your phone. There was nothing wrong with her explanation, but the exclamation mark at the end seemed a little unnecessary. Little tiger, are you in a bad mood today? Asked Wonton Seller weakly. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that you've been working too hard. You're obviously not satisfied, said Okamoto's fan, who couldn't stop talking about dirty topics. You're the one who's not satisfied, Renly retorted without holding back. You're using disgusting as funny. There was a moment of silence in the live thread. No one replied for a full 10 seconds until Wonton Seller said, stunned expression. Little tiger, you've been hacked, haven't you? Why do I feel like I'm going to scold the whole world today? Renly took a deep look at her phone and quickly exited the forum. She locked her screen and continued to watch the battle as if nothing had happened. Previously, Lu Cheng had given it his all. He had utilized his secret techniques, unique skills, on-the-spot experience, and battle talent to the fullest. Only then was he able to complete the offensive and suppress his opponent. He had almost defeated Vagar in a short period of time. However, even though he had performed above his usual standards, the inhuman monster still managed to seize the opportunity to resist and escape from the desperate situation. He had pulled both parties back to the same starting line. Of course, after such a round of attacks, Lu Qing could vaguely feel that his martial arts had improved to a certain extent. It wasn't referring to the specific realm of cultivation, but the level of actual combat. Bam! Vagar's right fist was wearing a silver-white thunder glove. His punch was so powerful that Lu Qing had no choice but to block it with the outburst of his dance stage. He used force concentration to dispel the paralysis caused by the electric shock and took a step back to defend himself. Bam bam! Vagar's punches, elbows, kicks, and knees came one after another without any gaps. Like a tsunami of lightning, each wave higher than the previous, Lu Qing was pressured to the point where he couldn't use the 9 words formula or prepare a simplified form of physical invulnerability. He could only use the 24 blizzard strikes to push the explosion of the dance stage to meet force with force. Bam bam! Every time Lu Qing borrowed strength and was about to turn the situation around with 7 or 8 consecutive explosions, Vagar would always pause for half a beat and use thunder explosion or similar moves to interrupt Lu Cheng's build-up. Then, he would return to his heavy punches and kicks, not giving his opponent time to prepare a killer move. Relying on the advantage of realm and strength, he slowly but surely wore down his opponent, slowly gaining an opportunity to win. This gave Lu Qing almost no hope of turning the tables. He felt like he was in a situation where he was boiling a frog in warm water. He deeply experienced the horror of an inhuman expert. If there were no more accidents, he would lose for sure. This realization gradually emerged in his heart. However, he couldn't find a way to break free from the suppression. The enemy was too strong. The outcome seemed to be unchangeable. I can only take the risk. Lu Cheng made up his mind. His eyes were filled with determination. He held onto his chi and stamped his feet. His right arm swelled, and he punched with a straight punch. Bam bam bam. Vagar's left fist, covered in a silver-white glove, punched out fiercely and collided with Lu Cheng's fist. Bam! With a muffled explosion, sparks flew. Lu Cheng's arm bounced back and his body swayed backward. Suddenly, he straightened his back and flew backward. He didn't put on any airs and landed himself in a desperate situation. How could Vagar let go of this opportunity? His thick and sturdy legs kicked, and his burly and majestic body gave chase. In an instant, he was in front of Lu Cheng. He wanted to end the battle in 2 or 3 moves. His inhuman speed was like a top 6th pin fighter with the effect of the attainment formula. At this moment, Lu Cheng didn't try to regain his footing and put on airs again. Instead, he took the opportunity to raise his hands and form a hand seal. In his mind, he outlined an ancient word that was filled with the smell of blood on the battlefield. He put himself in a desperate situation just to find a chance to use the 9 words formula. Put yourself in a situation of death and then come back to life. Army. Lu Cheng said in a low voice. His murderous aura almost materialized and pierced into Vagar's head, evoking the fear hidden deep in his heart and the fear of death. Vagar's movements slowed down. However, he was an inhuman mighty one who was often on the battlefield and tempered his mind by killing. He was only in a trance for a moment before regaining his senses. This prevented his opponent from following up with a severe warning. Lu Cheng's heart was like an ice mirror. He suppressed his frustration and gave up the chance to go for his opponent's heart. Swinging his back and bulging his muscles, he circled to the side of his opponent with the northern wind footwork. Boom! He broke through the airflow barrier in his high-speed movement and created a strong wind that blew towards his opponent's eyes. Dipper lifting dipper. Just as Vagar squinted his eyes, Lu Cheng formed another hand seal and pointed to himself. He let out a low roar from his throat, fighting. His body suddenly grew taller and his muscles bulged. He looked like a heavenly soldier from the legends. His right fist became unusually heavy and was about to strike. It's really the fighting formula. Lu Cheng and Vagar exchanged blows in a flash, so Peng Liyun couldn't be sure. Now that he heard it for the second time, he muttered to himself. Lu Cheng had already learned quite a few 9 words formulas. At the Japanese representative team, Muko Yamashita, who hadn't started his match yet, suddenly frowned. Facing the explosive fighting formula, Vagar didn't dare to be careless. His eyes glowed silver and he leaned sideways. Circles of lightning snakes circled around him and spun rapidly towards his opponent. Exclusive unique skill, lightning piercing. But at this moment, Lu Cheng seemed to have been prepared. He straightened his back and dragged his right fist to dodge the attack, causing Vagar's lightning piercing to hit the air and fly somewhere not far away. He had wasted a fighting formula in exchange for his opponent's unique skill to miss. In the sparring sessions a few days ago, Peng Liyun had dutifully imitated Vagar's fighting style. This gave Lu Cheng a good understanding of this milieu mighty one. He clearly knew that after using lightning piercing or invincible thunder explosion, there would be a short pause and he wouldn't be able to unleash a chain of attacks. This was his chance. Kacha! Lu Cheng stepped on the ground and his body shot forward like an arrow. In an instant, he was close to his opponent. His left arm was covered in a thick layer of ice armor, blocking the front. His right hand was clenched into a fist, ready to strike. At the same time, he outlined the crystal-clear and dreamy ice spirit holy light in his mind, creating a darkness with almost no heat. He planned to deal a fatal blow to Vagar, who was in the middle of a pause. Seeing that he couldn't dodge, had no strength to unleash his attacks, and would be defeated if he tried to block it head-on, Vhagar's eyes were filled with hatred. His silver eyes revealed a deep coldness. Suddenly, he jumped up. He jumped high and landed his feet at an angle, stomping heavily on Lu Cheng's head. Good timing. Lu Cheng had already experienced this and was prepared. The thundercloud in his mind roared, breaking through the ice spirit. His bent knees and slightly arched back suddenly straightened, and he flew up vertically. His right fist went straight up towards his opponent, who couldn't change his direction in midair. Sky rocket cannon. Head blow. If they were to exchange blows like this, Lu Cheng would at most bounce back and stagger. On the other hand, Vhagar's mind would definitely become rigid. In that case, he would fall from the air like a stone and land heavily on the ground, giving Lu Cheng the perfect opportunity to win. At this moment, Vhagar twisted his back and crossed his legs, weaving a sizzling silver-white electric ball. It fell slowly like a bubble and hit Lu Cheng, who couldn't avoid it. Using the reverse momentum, he shifted his position in mid-air and moved away slightly. This was an immature move that he had never used in actual combat before. Bzzzt. Clenching his fist, Lu Cheng, who was flying up into the air, brushed past Vhagar while his body was numb. He didn't manage to hit him. Bam! Vhagar swung his elbow towards his opponent's chest. Lu Cheng barely blocked with his left arm, which was protected by ice armor, but he was sent flying. With this exchange of blows, Vhagar gained the momentum to land first. He bounced and dashed towards his opponent. As Lu Cheng gathered his strength and unleashed his supernatural ability to throw a giant fireball, Vhagar nimbly changed his direction and dodged it. Boom! Lu Cheng's final move hit the arena, creating a strong explosion. Waves of red flames and violent shockwaves rolled out. Bam! Just as he was about to shift his position, Vhagar caught up with him. He leaped up, turned into an electric drill, and hit Lu Cheng with a sizzling sound. Lu Cheng blocked with his arms and saw a flash of light. He was paralyzed on the spot. When he regained consciousness, he smelled a burnt smell. His eyes reflected the figure of the referee raising his right hand. Vhagar wins. The hoarse voice reverberated, and the entire Xinxiang Stadium erupted in excitement. P.S. It's nearing the Dragon Boat Festival, so I have to go to my mother-in-law's house. I'll be on my way in the afternoon. The second update is at midnight. I'll continue tomorrow. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.